Welcome to North Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, how is the consensus board looking right now?
I think it's got like 22 boards right now, so it's about a third done. We've pushed up the publishing deadline for it this year, so we'll see if it gets done in time.
Like, are you including more boards than normal this year as well? So you're just trying to like mess with yourself as much as you can?
No, I never want to have fewer boards than our previous year is the problem. And last year I think I had like 61 or something, and now getting to 61 with like a week left seems impossible. Especially because like ESPN's not going to publish their Kuiper's final board until like the week of. Like there's a couple of people who will publish the week of, and I'm not going to get them in time for the first publish of the board this year. So we'll see how this goes.
Like, this is kind of my thing, and we want to make it better in every year. Also, this is also a way of making it worse for me every year.
Exactly.
Is this like when I added a second Christmas episode and I was reminded how much I hate the sound of my own voice?
Precisely. It is the exact same thing.
The exact same thing. Well, the number of man hours may be similar, sadly. Oh, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are doing well. We've got plenty of stuff to talk about. We have a draft preview with John Ledyard, which we've had him on the show before, and he's an excellent guest. Also, we do have a little bit of Vikings news and a fantastic mailbag, but before we start, just want to thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate, you can go to patreon.com/Norse Code, or you can go to paypal.me/Norse Code as well. Bonus episodes are put out at the moment once a month or so, once every 3-4 weeks or so. And we have a doozy of one to talk about with last week's and this week's stuff cut a bit. But you should still be able to enjoy it. If you would like bonus material, you can go to patreon.com/Norse Code, and for $3.50 a month, you can access said material. Just want to give a quick shout out to Alex Wald for joining us on Patreon last week. Again, thank you, Alex. All right, we are going to get right into it because this might be a bit of a long episode, and there's a lot of stuff going on, both for Viking stuff and around the world. So let's hit up the interview with John Ledyard of Pewter Report, recorded earlier today.
Hey, so I'm here with John Ledyard of, I don't know, what are you, Pewter Report this time? You cover the Bucks now? What?
Yeah, I cover the Bucks. Just decided to jump over and win a Super Bowl. No big deal at all.
Bandwagon, dude. Well, speaking of bandwagons, Julian Edelman, Hall of Famer, right?
Oh my gosh, man. I can't even believe we're having this conversation again. Like, it honestly drives me insane. And I know people just put it out there to get their reactions. I know they do, but I'm a sucker for it, man. It drives me
there's people that like believe it though, right?
Yeah,
obviously there's a lot of people pushing it that want to get reactions. I think Albert Breer thinks he has an argument. I think my mentions are full of people who like believe it. I don't know, man.
There's no argument for it unless you're just going to put
playoff
team
yards,
success. Dude. Yeah, I mean, since when has any Hall of Famer ever been picked that way? It hasn't been. Like, that's not.
Well, no, because all the other Hall of Famers that have had a ton of playoff yards were pretty good in the regular season too. So probably like you're not going to be like, Jerry Rice. I don't know if he had enough playoff production.
Well, I just don't even. I mean, with Edelman, part of it is just like this whole. Dream career that he's had, right? Like this, it's like you want that to be the end of the story rather than any retired. That's the end right now, and that's the end if he doesn't make the Hall of Fame. But I think people see this guy who's, quarterback at Kent State and had like one college catch or whatever.
Doug, he wasn't even a good quarterback at Kent State. Yeah. He was second team All MIAC once.
He truly is one of the greatest underdog stories of all time. I mean, and his size, his athleticism, all of that, the fact that he was able to carve out the career he has is amazing. But I think people just see that and they're like, if Julian Edelman, for example, was a second round pick, no one would want him in the Hall of Fame. It's part of like the story to people that he should end with that kind of an honor.
I'm going to argue with this fervor for Adam Thielen. Like whenever Adam Thielen, like if he retires tomorrow, I'm just going to be like Adam Thielen, Hall of Fame.
Yeah, story's great, man.
He was going to be he was going to be a dental hygiene equipment salesman.
Wasn't he like 26 when he broke out with the Vikings or something?
Yeah, because he did 4 years at, well, I guess it's not called Mankato State anymore, but I'm calling it Mankato State. He did 4 years at Mankato State, and then he spent like a year and a half on the Vikings practice squad. Then he got elevated to be a special teamer, and so he didn't actually like play receiver for like 6 years.
Unbelievable. How old is he now?
He's 31.
Jeez. Feels like he's just starting out, but he's an old head already.
Yeah.
And now he finally got his chance to be a wide receiver one and really kind of make some progress on that Hall of Fame career, and then they drafted a guy better than him.
Yeah, a first rounder. Glory hog, dude.
Hate to see it.
Well, okay, no, we're here to talk about the draft. I'm wasting your time, which evidently is precious. Okay. Let's talk about the Vikings draft, because this is a Vikings podcast. Ostensibly, we talk like way more about like beekeeping than the Vikings on this podcast. But
I don't know anything about beekeeping, and probably
neither do I. And yet,
I was going to say I probably know less about which prospects are good or bad, but here we go.
All right. So obviously, everyone knows that the Vikings have a need along the offensive line. That's boring. What is your best argument for why the Vikings should not draft an offensive lineman in the first round?
At some point, they've just got to make it work. They've got to find a guy who can actually develop the players that they have, I think, right? I mean, like, they've spent plenty of resources. I mean, some of them have turned out good, right? Like, I mean,
Brown O'Neal's pretty good. Right. That's like, you kind of end the list right there, though, right?
Okay, so one of them ends up Garrett Bradbury got better, right? Didn't he? I felt like he got better.
I mean, like, better from what, though? Like, he's still not, right, exactly. He's still not, like,
good.
In this average center good. Is the problem.
Okay, so you have your center. Garrett Bradbury is going to be good this year. Watch and see.
Okay, fine. Garrett Bradbury is good.
Yeah, well, going to be. Don't get ahead of yourself. Brian O'Neill is good.
Right.
Have I mentioned that? Ezra Cleveland needs to be good. Like, he needs to be one of your solutions, probably. I mean, no, there's a pretty good argument for drafting the other side. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty rough.
This is the worst argument I've ever heard.
Yeah, I guess I'm not going to. I can't make it. Here's the best argument for not doing it in the first round. The best argument for not doing it in the first round is that it is a deeper class at those positions, at tackle especially, and interior offensive line. It's a deeper class in both of those spots than some other positions in this draft, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think you really need to – the Vikings have several needs. I think they need to look at the best players available at those positions. And if there is some amazing offensive lineman that falls there, I'm not saying don't draft offensive line. I'm just giving you your best argument to not do it is that the offensive line, in my mind, is more of a group function than an individual function. It doesn't mean you never take individuals. It just means that if you can find competent players in the second round for your offensive line or later in the draft for your offensive line, I think that's a great way to build a line. Now, it's easier said than done. Not every class has that. I think this class might be one that has it. And so I think that they have the potential to be able to do that later in the draft.
So Sewell and Slater are picked before the Vikings pick. Let's say the Chargers scoop them. Do you trade down, or is there another offensive lineman that you think fits that talent tier where you're like, you know what, screw it, he's too good, we got to take him?
Oh, I mean, definitely Elijah Vera Tucker to me is in that tier. I think he would be a great pick for Minnesota. Again, if I'm making the argument against it, you could
play guard or tackle.
I think he would play guard in the NFL. I mean, it really doesn't matter what I think. I would try everybody at tackle. That's always my philosophy. I'd try.
That's
try
fair.
him at
tackle.
That's
fair. Yeah.
But he has 32 1/4 arms. So I mean, the NFL is going to look at him and say, "Wow, we'll never."
And he's 6'3". He's got no length anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So he is just not. He's not the body that they play there, whether I like it or not. So he would play left guard probably in that situation, which you can argue about value of what you're getting and all that. But in a vacuum, yeah, he's a really, really good player. He's everything you kind of want at the position because he's very explosive and athletic, but he's also very physical and aggressive, finishes. They rave about his competitiveness there, according to Dane's draft guide. And so it sounds like he kind of checks every box. And he's played all up and down the line, too. So he's played tackle and guard, experience of both. And I think in a pinch, if you need him to kick out the tackle, he can do that. Obviously, there's value in a guy that could do that. So it's a pretty he to me is a pretty attractive prospect for Minnesota if they wanted to go that route. Now, he's probably the only – I mean, I would put Tevin Jenkins in that conversation as well.
I was going to ask about Tevin. I want to know why Tevin Jenkins isn't in the top half of the first round conversation, because whenever I watch him, Dude,
He should.
I don't get why he's not in the top half of the first round.
Yeah, my offensive line hot take in terms of the tackles is that I don't think there's a sizable gap difference. There's definitely not a tier difference for me between Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell, and Tevin Jenkins. I have them all grouped in the same range of grades. I really think Tevin Jenkins could end up being the best out of the group. The real question for Jenkins is where he's going to be played in the NFL. His arm length coming in better than expected. I think scouts had him like sub 33. Dane Burglar was talking about in the pre-pro day process. Then at the pro day, or at the scouting thing that they had, I forget what it was, but wherever he's training or whatever, they had like that scouting combine thing. And his arms measured in like a little over 33. And then they got even longer at his pro day. Amazing.
Oh, thank God.
Miracle. Yes, I know. Unbelievable. But his arms got even longer at his pro day. I forget what they were, but they were well over 33. So he's past the minimum, but he's still not at that 34. I do see there's a couple times on tape where that length gives him some issues. I don't think it's the end of the world in the NFL. I told Brandon Thorne this, he reminds me a lot of Marshall Yanda, in that I think he would have a good career at tackle, right? Like he could be a starting tackle for his career and probably be a good player, like a really good player maybe. But at guard, I think he can be one of the best players in the league at his position. So that's the kind of the wrestling match with Tevin Jenkins in my mind, is like, what are teams going to play him at? And then where will his value stack up? Like, because Sewell probably is a better tackle long-term in the NFL than Jenkins is. But Jenkins could be a better guard than Sewell ever is a tackle. So
are there any tackles in this class with length?
I mean, it's pretty hard to find them.
They're
usually bad.
Because it was like Sewell 33-inch arms, Slater 33-inch arms, Vera Tucker 33-inch arms, Jenkins squeaked by 33-inch arms. I guess Vera Tucker was 32. Yeah. Oh God.
I mean, it's pretty much across the board. I think all the top tackles.
All these T-Rexes, man. We have to go all the way down to like the people that the Vikings can't draft. Like Jalen Mayfield had long enough arms, but he's slower than a turtle, dude.
Yeah, and his athletic testing was not going to put him on the same level as the rest of the offensive linemen in the Vikings room. Will be looking down their noses at him. Like, what are you, man? We saw your pro day results. My goodness, get out of here. But Christian Darrisaw, I mean, he does have length. And honestly, I mean, Virginia Tech runs a lot of zone. It's not like he can't do that. He can. Physically, athletically, I don't know that much is out of the realm of Christian Darrisaw, like in terms of what he can do. The question when you're watching him is kind of, what does he want to do? Because there were games like the Duke game, it's hard for me to even describe. I don't know that I've seen an offensive lineman with that like just mundane of a play temperament. He just.
I want the Paul Alexander take on him. Now that you said this.
Oh, has he tweeted much during this draft? I haven't even seen.
I don't think so. But when he tweeted out the Yadni Kajus take about Yadni not wanting to square up, now I want that take for every offensive lineman.
I forgot all about that. That was a great take. Actually, I don't even know what happened to Yadni Kajus. So, where is he?
Yeah, maybe he's right, man.
Maybe he was right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was a good point. But Darrisaw has that length. He has physically and athletically traits that you want. He's young enough. I mean, he isn't even 22 yet. And so, I mean, there are things definitely about Darrisaw that make him an interesting prospect. But I think teams are going to be kind of turned off by how many reps are going through the motions. That's not usually a concern you have on the offensive line. I am very hesitant to even bring that concern up when I watch a guy's on tape, even if it's a common refrain. His tape, there were moments where it was overwhelming. I'm trying to remember. There was a smaller school that they played, and who it was is escaping me right now. But he was getting it taken to him. I mean, I'm not talking about Duke either, although that was a rough game for him as well. But there was a game they had against somebody. I cannot remember.
What, like VMI or something?
I can't remember. Let me look actually while we're talking. But yeah, and I was just kind of taken aback at how rough he played in that game against a competition where he should be dominating. And there were certainly moments against Miami where he played really well, and that's obviously a really good edge defender group. I think the NFL is going to be all over the place on him. There will be some teams that don't like him at all, I think. I don't know where the Vikings will fall on that. Like I said, I think he could fit. He could make a lot of sense for them. Again, played left tackle, so it's kind of a plug-in situation where Tevin Jenkins did play some left tackle. but his best tape came at right tackle, so there's a little bit of wondering.
Yeah, if the Vikings grabbed Tevin Jenkins, I think immediately you move Brian O'Neill back to left tackle where he played in college. You put Tevin Jenkins at right tackle, and you just beat people up, right?
That's right.
You only draft Tevin Jenkins to beat people up. So my take on Tevin Jenkins is that he's the player that I think we project Mekhi Becton to be, which is not to say Becton isn't mean as hell, but like, because he is, but like Jenkins is like the what you aspire to be. I think like, from that perspective,
he's absolutely nasty. Where Becton's just kind of like, this is literally just how strong I am. Like, I'm not even necessarily trying to
like he finishes soul. As a matter of course, right?
Exactly. It's science more than it is like his, his demeanor. Where with Jenkins, it's literally like, this is my
like I am so PO'd that you came to play today. That's right. Offensive to me.
Right. Like he acted like he read some scouting report that Joseph Asai was projected higher than him, and then just like beat him like a rag doll. It was like, oh, you think the Vikings are going to take you first, buddy? Not after they watch this tape. And then he just
who's the one guy that actually got it? It was like Ronnie Perkins, like the most random guy got it on him.
It was one rep. It was literally like one rep, but then everybody's like, "Oh, Ronnie Perkins." I think that one rep put Perkins on the map until he decided for some reason to do testing at his pro day. Can you run? No. Can you bend? No. Can you jump? No. All right, let's do this pro day. And it's just like, what? Why? Don't let him do it, man. This is he's the perfect out this year, man. You don't have to do anything. Just say he pulled his groin or something. I don't know. Nobody's gonna check.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, I think Jenkins. Yeah, it was that one rep where he got long armed, and that goes back to kind of what I'm saying. Like, there's times where it's hard for him to overcome the fact that he isn't that long. But it's rare, and I don't think in the NFL it's debilitating at all. But edges are just a lot better with their hands in the NFL, and they're definitely a lot better outside of the Big 12 with their hands. And so that's something that he's going to have to adjust to, as all tackles do. But I still like him a lot at tackle. I just think he could be like a special player at guard, and I'm kind of always rooting for special player potential out of prospects that I like. So I would try him at tackle if I were an NFL team, but selfishly, I kind of hope he gets moved to guard and he just wrecks people for 12 years.
It's like the Zach Martin argument, right?
Exactly. It's pretty similar to that. I mean, Martin probably could have been like Yanda. It's like those guys probably could have been good tackles for sure.
Well, I mean, I think Martin and Yanda both have had NFL reps at tackle, and they were both pretty like good.
Right.
Or like Kelechi Osemele played a lot of tackle and was like pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I mean, they're guards.
Right. Exactly. Like they're if they stay healthy, Hall of Fame type potential guards. No disrespect to Edelman or anybody, but they have that kind of ceiling at guard. And I'm not sure that at tackle, do they have that kind of ceiling? I don't know. Maybe Martin does, but I think that I don't know if it would be in the conversation for those other guys at tackle, whereas a guard it could be. And so that's kind of my mindset, is I just want to see them be the best, like the most dominant player they can be in the NFL, even if it isn't quite as valuable to their team.
Well, okay, so my next question is this, because you were talking about depth would maybe be the best argument to avoid the offensive line. So I ran through a couple of simulators on the Draft Network to see what would happen if I just kind of like avoided tackle in the first round. And, primarily I was trying to trade into the second round. And what I found was there's nobody that screams like Vikings offensive lineman in like the late second round, which is really where you would be able to trade back into and get that second round. Like you wouldn't be able to really effectively get like the 50th overall pick. You're looking at like 61, 63 or whatever, right? And the guys that were dropping to me were like Jalen Mayfield, who I think is a good value for some team at 61, but he's not a Vikings player, right?
Right.
Or Creed Humphrey, who tested really well, but you watch him and it's just like, well, that guy's not a Viking. I'm sorry. Right. And again, Creed Humphrey is a really good player, right? So I don't think that's the issue. Is just I don't think that they're very good fits for what the Vikings want to do. And I couldn't find second rounders outside of Brady Christensen, who we have a mutual friend that just put him in the first round. So that'll be interesting. But
that was vicious, but I do like him. He has, by the way, 32 and a quarter inch arms, Brady Christensen. So
Okay.
athletically,
All
there are
right.
fits, but
All
32 and a
right.
quarter. What are the NFL going to do with him? Like he's a small guard. He's 302.
He's a small guard. He's 28 years old or something.
Yeah, that's right. He's almost 25. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, right.
Jeez, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah,
First
he's going to Danny Watkins some team.
Jeez, there's a throwback.
I love watching Brady Christensen. I don't want to
Yes.
I don't want to do him too dirty, but like, goodness, 25.
Right.
But yeah, like I that's the only guy I could find in the bottom of the second round that really, unless like Quinn Miners is up there, which he's being listed everywhere as a center, and like, yeah, okay, but to me he seems like a guard, right? Like,
I've been doing this a long time, and I still am not quite sure how I distinguish guards from centers as prospects. So I just group them in interior offensive line. What's the big difference between scouting a guard?
yeah, but would you play Garrett Bradbury a guard?
No.
There you go. See, done.
Maybe. What if he's great at guard? I don't know. What if he all of a sudden? I had Garrett Bradbury ranked very high. I'd just like to identify that at the top of it. So that probably influences my very positive outlook on him. But I still think he can be a good player. So
but that wasn't the question. The question was, would you play him a guy? And you immediately said no. So you clearly make some distinction.
Right. I just don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know whether a guy could. My best way of saying is that it's hard for me to know from the outside, because I think two of the most important things about playing center are the ability to literally just snap the ball accurately on a consistent basis, and the mental.
Hold on, let's ask, why did Arizona want to play Mason Cole at center? By the way, like the two things that distinguish a center from a guard, and he can't do one of them.
I don't know if he could do either. I don't know what the mental acumen for the position either, based on his level of play and his tape. I'm not sure what he brings to the table, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue what is seen. I mean, his Senior Bowl is one of the funniest things. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of in my mind when I think about the Mason Cole reps. Honestly, the Senior Bowl, where he's snapping way off to the left every single rep, and you're just like, how can they even run this drill with him in there? And that's what I think about, like literally just the ability to snap the ball consistently. Maybe you can learn it. I mean, I'm sure you can, but it's a lot harder when you haven't done it coming into the NFL. And then the mental part of it, obviously playing center and being able to communicate to the rest of the offensive line, being the guy literally just in the middle. That's helpful to be able to do that. There's little things like, obviously, you're snapping and you're taking your first step. It's difficult, things like that. But it's hard for me to say, oh, a guy definitely can't play center, but he can play guard, It's I don't know. It's a difficult thing for me to say in that way.
To me, the thing is, like, so even though center, it feels like it requires much more of a player than they get valued less by the NFL, and they seem just less scarce by the NFL because you can regularly help a center out in the run game or in pass protection. Typically, when you're peeling off of a double team, it's a guard rather than a center. They're the ones going up to the second level. Yeah, it's nice to have a center that can single block. It's great to have an athletic center. Everyone wants Dermontti Dawson. But they're just valued less by the NFL, either by contract or by draft position or whatever. And if that's the case, I take a look at the Wisconsin Whitewater kid. I see he's like 320 pounds, running his sub 540. And I think, man, I want that guy at the second level as often as possible. And I don't want him to waste time thinking about getting his elbow tucked in after the snap. I want him to just go and beat somebody up. Yeah,
no, that's one way to look at it for sure. I mean, I'm not really sure why he's getting put at center so much. I think he played at guard a lot there, and I know he took center reps in practices there, but I think that was it. I don't know if he even played a game.
He took center reps at the Senior Bowl, but I thought he played guard at, or maybe even tackle it. We should talk to Owen, actually.
Yeah, I actually have talked to Owen about it, and I just can't remember what he said.
Yeah.
But I know he didn't play center in a game there. I remember that. He practiced at center, and then he played at center at the Senior Bowl a little bit. And he looked fine there, and I think he could do that. But I would probably project him as a guard as well. That's kind of where I've seen him so far. But again, that isn't to say that he can't play center. But I do think, again, what you're saying about him being in space, that's basically the mindset that it felt like he had at Wisconsin Whitewater. I mean, there's reps on his tape where he just is taking off down the field and just trying to destroy people. And he catches smaller, quicker guys in space, and it's brutal. I mean, he just absolutely just smashes them. So, I mean, there is definitely some level of fit with what Minnesota likes to do in terms of their offense. I know they ran a lot of different stuff at Whitewater, but that was one of the things that they did. There's some outside zone in there, and there's definitely examples of him kind of chipping, climbing to the second level, reaching guys, finishing. So, yeah, the athleticism is going to check the box, and the size and physicality, you're going to check the box. I'm sure that if you asked him, he'd be one of those guys that say, heck yeah, I like to run the ball like 75% of the time. And so that's probably what Minnesota – I know maybe Minnesota's looking to change. I did hear Zimmer's comments the other day that he's coming into the 2021 with a new perspective, and it might involve throwing the ball more. And so I don't want to discredit him from that approach, but it does feel like Miners is kind of a fun fit for a team that's looking to run the ball a lot.
Yeah, so those are really the only two names I could think of that really fit in the second round for the Vikings, which made it tough for me to think, oh yeah, no, absolutely, they can kind of avoid a tackle in the first round or whatever, you know?
Well, what about, okay, so end of the second, so you're thinking Sam Cosby isn't there anymore, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, and Liam Eichenberg's not there either?
Right, like, so the idea is like they trade down in the first round to get a second round pick, right? And at pick 20, whatever, they draft like Jalen Phillips, right? So the point is to avoid an offensive lineman. And so in the second round, you're in the 60s, right? So Cosme's not there, Eichenberg's not there. He gets drafted in the 40s. Cosme gets drafted, 32 or whatever. And that kind of leaves you in a spot, right? So now you're thinking, because Eichenberg, yeah, I think he fits the Vikings. So now you're left like with a bunch of players that are good, but they just don't seem like system fits, at least by the simulations I was using.
What about Dylan Raduns? Is he gone too? Because I think he could be there.
Okay, so he's interesting because he should be a fit. I think based off of what I saw, he didn't really match what the Vikings look for in a tackle, and he's just too tall to play guard. So
it's kind of disappointing because he's the guy that people were like, I don't know if he can play tackle because of his lack of length. And then he came in with like the longest arms in the class. So it's like, oh, shit. Now we got to keep this guy tackle. We really wanted to move him. And everybody we wanted to play a tackle, we've got to move. So he's kind of challenging everyone, I think. I mean, he's only 301 pounds, and I bet he had to eat a lot to get there. Like, he's not a big tackle at all, or offensive lineman.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So he's in a real awkward spot then.
He is. 34-inch arms, but 9-inch hands. I mean, this guy's got Joe Burrow hands. Like, I don't know. He's a very odd profile.
Joe Burrow hands. He's got a pop gun for an arm too.
Jeez, man. Come on, that's my number one guy. Kid got his knee blown out, man. Let's have a little decency. See that line he was playing behind? Let's cut him a break.
Yeah, we're getting him Jamar Chase. We'll solve that problem.
Oh boy! Now you're gonna get me going.
The PFF guys, man. I love it when they make these arguments, man. It's so good for the timeline.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Well, okay. So I think Vikings fans have talked a lot about offensive linemen. Let's talk about other stuff. Let's talk about mid-round edge defenders, because if they grab an offensive lineman early on, they do need to get an edge defender at some point in the draft. I don't think that you can just say that DJ Wanham is absolutely going to take the next step, or that Stephen Weatherly can start and feel rely. Like, if they win the job, great, but you don't want to rely on it, right? So the problem is, ever since, I don't want to say that Danielle Hunter was the person who initiated this or anything like that, but from a Vikings perspective, it feels like ever since Danielle Hunter was drafted, it's been difficult to find those uber athletes that fall all the way to the third round. The NFL, it feels like, has caught on to the idea that if you're a super athletic defensive lineman, you're going to be gone by the end of round two. At least that's my read on it. Do you think there are edge defenders that kind of fit this super athlete mold? Maybe they're really long too, that feels like they could be a Vikings target in the third or fourth round, regardless of production. They don't have to be great benders, but they do have to be explosive, just typically what the Vikings have been looking at.
Yes, very much so. This is a very elite athlete, questionable everything else, type of draft for edge defender. There's a lot of guys that look great on the hook.
Oh yeah, there's tons of elite athletes.
Right.
But I just feel like they're gone by the middle of the second round.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we're obviously in a draft where it's very hard to say, but could Joseph Asai be available still?
Maybe. So the issue, of course, is, and this is in the piece I published today about mock draft simulators, is that Osai typically is just gone in the sims. Who knows if that's like reflects reality, right? Right. He's somebody that I could see fall. I could also see Jason Owa fall, right? Like he gets regularly mocked in the first, right?
I mean, he had 0 sacks last year. Like there's going to be a lot of teams
doesn't
that
have a sack.
Get out of here.
And it's not as if he was double teamed a ton. No. It's not as if, right, which was like the Myles Garrett argument, the Jadeveon Clowney argument, that in their final years they got double teamed so much they didn't get a ton of production. Mm-hmm. And it's not as if he was like a top tier pressure producer. He was a pretty good pressure producer, but he's not like the top tier pressure producer where you can just say, well, those sacks will come, right? He was like, I want to say top 15 in the FBS in pressure rate, which is great. But if you pair it with like 0 sacks, you've got like some, like if you're top 3 and you don't have any sacks, you'd just be like that, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. But like top 15, I don't know.
Yeah,
so I could see him.
Area.
Yeah. So I could see him potentially falling. Obviously, we have no idea what Jalen Phillips' medicals are. And I guess the NFL doesn't know for a couple more weeks now, too. Because he missed the Indianapolis check because of COVID concerns. But, so he could fall due to medical concerns. Mm-hmm. But for people outside of the Jason Owa, Joseph Asai, Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, like those guys seem like they're, I don't know, like Quincy Roche, who's not a super athlete or whatever, seem to be guys in the third round. Like, I don't know who else along the, like, you could argue Milton Williams who has edge athleticism, but he just doesn't have the arm length that people look for there. So he's probably just going to stay on the inside and gain 10 pounds.
Right. Well, one guy that's interesting is Joe Tryon from Washington.
Actually, okay, that one's good. Yeah.
Yeah. He tested great. And his size is unbelievable. I've talked to actually scouts who kind of are out there on the West Coast, and they've been like, dude, we just love the guy. Like, he works his tail off. He tests well. He looks unbelievable. He takes great care of his body. He's physical. He didn't play in 2020, though, and the 2019 tape just isn't very good. Like, there's no way around it. It's hard for me to imagine anybody watching this 2019 tape and being like, wow, this guy's a stud. Like, he had some sacks, but a lot of it was like late or against guys who couldn't pass that at all, or late in the play. Where it's kind of just a complete coverage sack. And again, he plays hard and he's physical, but he just has no plan. There's no go-to move. He's getting off the ball is inconsistent. Washington State tape, gave me a headache. He's running around like crazy and he can't get past anybody, and it's just. He's just kind of a bull in a china shop right now, and it's going to take a lot to kind of cultivate him. I didn't see he didn't test unbelievable, but he tested pretty well.
Right.
And I didn't see even that when I watched him on tape, honestly. I would have liked to see that come out more. So he's a guy that I very much wish played in 2020. He didn't, and so I'm low on him
he was only like 19 years old in 2019 or something like that too. So
yes. He's going to be I think he's going to be attractive to NFL teams. We'll see whether anybody can develop him or not, but I bet NFL teams really end up liking him.
All right. So, okay, that's an interesting name. Also, cornerback is coming up for the Vikings because of the Jeff Gladney arrest. I don't know how to value cornerback for the Vikings, which is obviously like hilarious because sometimes they'll just take one in the first. It kind of doesn't matter. But
just to keep you on your toes, hey, did you scout your corners this year? Well, you're screwed.
But who feels like a Vikings corner to you? I think Surtain is just like obviously feels like a Vikings corner, but
right.
Like,
so you're thinking round 1 here,
10th overall, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Dallas probably picks him before the Vikings even have a shot, so it might not even matter.
Right.
But like,
okay, so let's say J.C. Horn and Surtain are off the board at the point that they pick.
So then who do you think kind of fits the mold of the types of players the Vikings have gotten? Like, and not necessarily like Jeff Gladney, although probably that physical, but like a little bit bigger. Cameron Dancer was a bit of an outlier too, but he was at least he played against big receivers as a big corner, as opposed to Jeff Gladney, who played just like as a scrapyard dog against big receivers. But like Mike Hughes was like 5'10", I guess, but the rest of them were like 6'2".
Right. I would think I would think that Greg Newsome is somebody who's on their radar at least. Scheme diverse player, but definitely good instincts in zone, just good processor, reads things well from zone. I feel like, and he's physical. Like he will come up and he'll hit. Now he's not a big body, but he's tall and he's long, and so he's got a lot of things that you're looking for in that regard. Aggressive, physical, plays with an edge. I think everybody that's written about him or talked to people that know him have written that about him. I thought his tape was really good. He showed a lot of those things. He showed the ability to find the ball. It was only 6 games this past season. His injury concerns, there's questions for sure, but I think he kind of just erupted onto the scene really this past year with 10 pass breakups and interception. He had 11 pass breakups the year before. Again,
this does feel like a cornerback class where the corners are a little bit more physical this year than other years. It feels like as I go down these scouting reports, a lot more corners are described as like wanting to see contact, aggressive in the run game. Not all of them are great tacklers, but like it feels like more people are describing more of these corners as physical. Does that feel accurate to you?
Yeah, definitely accurate. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily great against the run, though. It doesn't always translate. People are going to
right, yeah, willing, maybe not. Yeah.
Right. I mean, J.C. Horn will literally try to rip a receiver's face off, but ask him to make a play in the run game, and he'll just be like, "Nah, like I'd rather sit over here." I'm like, "What? How does that mentality not just kind of carry over naturally?" But it just doesn't seem to. He just turns it on and off. So there are some guys like that. I mean, even Horn's fine. I mean, I don't care. I think he's still the best corner in the class. But Surtain will come up against the run and play, but he's not like a standout in that way or anything like that. Newsome is actually probably the best of the top guys in that regard. Caleb Farley, they say he's missed a lot of tackles. I watched probably 4 or 5 games. I didn't think I saw anything too bad from him. I mean, nothing C.J. Henderson like from last year. He's very talented. I like Caleb Farley a good bit. The injury we'll see. It seems like the latest reports have been good, so we'll see what happens there. And the fact that he didn't play this year because he's raw, that concerns me. He's really interesting because he played mostly more zone coverage in college than he did press man, but he really just looks more natural as a press man corner. But there's going to be that technique aspect of it that has to be proven now in the NFL because his zone. When I watched him in zone, I thought, oh, he can get it done, but he's not really like a super instinctive like playmaker in zone. Where I felt like when he was in man coverage situations, he turned and found the ball well a few times and made plays, and he was kind of very comfortable in that role. But the technique stuff at the line of scrimmage is going to be what needs work. So, I mean, again, he's a bigger corner for sure. So those guys both fit. There's, if you're going to take out the Asante Samuel types, which he's a good player and probably plays above his weight, but 5'10", 180, that's probably not what the Vikings are looking for at that position. But even as you go down the board, this is a class that is just, I mean, really.
Well, like Eric Stokes might sneak into the first round. We were just talking about that earlier. He's pretty physical.
Yes.
I don't know that much about Tyson Campbell, but he strikes me as not shy.
He's another one that I think could be. Melifonwu. Ifeatu Melifonwu.
Yeah.
People are going to not. I've already seen people write like, oh, like his brother was, kind of like not very physical and didn't love the game. Maybe that'll. I'm like, what in the world? Like his brother? Like I have 2 brothers. I'm very different than my brothers. Like I don't know how we carry.
Yeah,
that
man. Derek Watt's not that great either, man. Who cares?
I wonder if Derek Watt can rush the passer like TJ.
Yeah, Dan Gronkowski made a terrible fullback. No one gives a shit. Like, come on.
Right. Like, I mean, yeah. So, and I watched Ifeatu, and I thought that he was plenty physical and aggressive, So, does he always, I'm not saying he's J.C. Horn, but, anyway, I think he could be another one that is potential. There are a lot of corners. It's kind of like the reverse of tackle in my mind from what you were saying. Like, you don't know if you see the tackles for Minnesota later. I think they could not go corner early. They might not get as good a player, but they can still probably get a pretty good player later on down the board, especially if they think, Dancer's going to be a dude for us, then maybe they feel like if we've got our number one guy, which I'm not saying Dancer is. I didn't get that impression. Played well, got better as the year went on. I don't know if we'd say he's a number one guy, but not the next day.
But yeah, but there's a lot of length and physicality, right? Because there's Melifonwu, maybe second, maybe third. There's Adebo. From Stanford.
Yeah,
he's 6'1", maybe second, maybe third. You've got Robert Rochelle, who's got 32-inch arms. You've got Ambry Thomas from Michigan, who I like him.
I like him too.
32-inch arms. Like, there's a couple of guys, right, that feel like, you've got length, you've got some physicality for some of these guys. I just drafted, in the 4th round, I think, Elijah Griffin for the Vikings. He was just outside their athletic parameters, but I didn't have any corners, and I was just running out, and I was like, yeah, screw it. Mm-hmm. He was like a half a second off somewhere, or not half. That's pretty big, actually, but like a tenth of a second off somewhere and half an inch off the vertical or whatever. And I was like, you know what? If you're running out of corners, this is not going to matter.
Right. Yeah. It's a deep classic corner. It really is.
Yeah.
And some teams are going to, when you get those later rounds, you start saying, we can fudge our thresholds a little bit or things like that. But I think DJ Daniel was pretty good size too. Aggressive.
Yeah.
Played well Senior Bowl.
Yeah. DJ Daniel's got 33-inch arms. It's not bad. Here's an interesting question. Israel Mukuamu, 6'4", 34-inch arms, 80-inch wingspan.
Safety.
Did not choose to test, I think probably for a reason, right?
Yes. Yeah. The reason is that he would have gotten absolutely cooked. I'm pretty sure he would have been doing his testing by himself and a receiver still would have beaten him. I saw some of his tape and I was watching Horn. I was like, this guy's got to move position as soon as possible.
Yeah, but because I don't think he could play safety.
I don't know. Maybe linebacker. Bulk up.
Can you imagine moving from corner to linebacker?
I mean, Kyle Pitts. I know it's Kyle Pitts, but he matched up with Kyle Pitts for some reps. And let me tell you, the results were Old Testament biblical destruction. It was very ugly. There was a play, literally, I kid you not, Mukuamu, or however I think it's how you say it, Mukuamu. He is on Kyle Pitts in the red zone, and he gets beat immediately off the line of scrimmage. The ball is late, like most balls from Kyle Trask, and Kyle Pitts is anticipating the ball coming in, so he's like extra eager, so he kind of jumps and brings it in. Mukuamu still isn't in the screen, and then you see Mukuamu kind of trot into the screen and can't believe it. And he just throws up his hands, and J.C. Horn's all the way across the field at the left pylon, and you could see him. He's looking right across at Mukuamu, and he just gesture, throws his hands up. He's and he puts his head to the side, come on, man, really, it's are you gonna be? You weren't even in the screen when we watched the all 22. It's gonna be all 21. That's not right. You could just see it on his face. It actually was the play that probably reminded me the most of Jalen Ramsey when I watched J.C. Horn. I feel like Ramsey would do the same exact thing, if his teammate got toasted like that.
All right.
I love those random all 22 moments,
Oh, yeah, that's great. I think a favorite of mine, and this is something that Matthew Collar and I talk about a lot, is oh, crap, I totally forgot the name of the guy now, too. Oh, God. It was some random tight end, Penn State tight end, kind of a pretty good athlete. Do you know who I'm talking? He was an undrafted free agent.
How long ago?
It was 4 years ago, maybe. God.
4 years ago. Damn.
This is so dumb. I'm ruining the story.
I'm gonna have to look.
Kyle something.
Kyle something. Something was his last name.
No, I mean, I don't. Come on, dude. Kyle Carter. That's it. Kyle Carter.
Kyle Carter. I do remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 2016. Yeah. So 5 years ago. And I think it was in 2017. It was Case Keenum, obviously, and he's on the field for 10 snaps all year. One of these snaps, it's late in the season. The Vikings are making a playoff push. They're fighting for the number 1 seed. And he breaks just wide the hell open, just insanely open, right? He's going to remember this moment for the rest of his life. He's so open. And the only reason that you can see anyone else on the screen is because the person operating the all-22 has the entire field in the view of the camera, right? Mm-hmm. He zoomed all the way out. Kyle Carter is 40 yards downfield. There's no one near him. And he's waving his arms, hoping that Case Keenum sees him, right? And you don't see this all that often on all 22 where a player will literally just stop, turn around, and literally do jumping jacks to grab someone's attention. And Keenum is not averse to taking chances or anything like that. But he looks downfield. He sees Kyle Carter wide open. Again, nobody's within 40 yards of him, right? 40. And he dumps it off to CJ Ham.
100% better because it's CJ Ham and not like Dalvin Cook or something.
Right? And Carter throws up his hands, and the safety who's like in the end zone is coming down to try and tackle CJ Ham, and Carter just turns around and looks at him, and the safety just runs by.
Oh my gosh. CJ Ham.
He got like 30 yards too, but like, dude.
Wow. That's amazing. Cal Carter. I didn't even know he got to play in the league. That's funny.
Well, he didn't after that.
That was it.
Got a block, dude.
But coach, no buts. No buts, Cal Carter. You're the second best Cal in our tight end room. The other guy runs a 4.9. He's never been this wide open. But he would have blocked.
He would have blocked. Yeah, man. Some of these all 22 moments are just so good.
Great.
Anyway, we got to talk about some draft picks. All right, so we talked about edge rushers. Do you think the Vikings would draft a quarterback in the first round if, let's say, Mac Jones is there?
A quarterback in the first round if Mac Jones is there.
Is there any first-round quarterback that, like, so obviously excluding Lawrence and Wilson, if Fields is there, do you think they would? If Lance is there, of course I forgot that guy's name. Mac Jones.
I don't. Oh man, I mean, certainly they should. There's no. I can say that with confidence. It's not a rip on Kirk. I'm just saying, like, you got a game changer like Fields.
Man, we got a Cousins hater on the pod, huh? Wow.
I mean, he's fine, but at the end of the day, he is what he is. And do I ever think Kirk Cousins is going to get you to the promised land? I mean, I don't think so. But Fields could maybe. Yeah, he definitely could. And so I haven't actually studied a lot of Lance yet. He's kind of just like falling between the cracks for me. Well, because there's no chance of the Bucs game, I wanted to know where I was at with Fields and Wilson for the discussions and the fact that I knew I'd be on radio shows that would ask me. But I've just kind of not studied Trey Lance a whole lot. I have Fields higher than Wilson for sure, and I like
for sure.
A lot.
For sure.
Yeah,
way
sure.
ahead.
The biggest thing
you got a whole round grade between them, huh?
No, not a whole round grade, but I think Fields could be special. Wilson concerns me. I think he's a little bit boom or bust, and I'm hedging obviously. Because
Roto-World, Ledyard thinks Wilson can't be special.
I didn't say that. I said could be special, but might not definitely be special. Where it's hard for me to envision a future where Fields and Lawrence aren't really, really good in the NFL. Where Wilson, he could be brought down by his own style of play if he doesn't get a little bit better at the mental processing and the moving through progressions. He has to be able to come off things quicker than he does at college. You are not going to have as long as he has.
This is a take that needs to be on Twitter a little bit more, right? That Fields is ahead of Wilson because of progressions.
For sure, not even question. Like that's why the narrative is so ridiculous to me, because I'm not saying there aren't moments where Fields takes sacks that he shouldn't, but there is no comparison in my mind. If Fields had been facing the pass rushers that Zach Wilson was facing, the difference would be palpable. Like you would understand like what I'm talking about in terms of Fields. I'm not saying he's under siege all the time or anything like that, but the process had to be quicker for Fields because of the level of competition. Wilson knew that he was going to probably have all day, but that offensive line, and you could see the game that he didn't, I thought had all day, and the Coastal Carolina game.
The Coastal Carolina game, yeah.
Yes, but there are also lots of bad drops in that game. The Houston game is one nobody talks about, where he made plenty of good plays in that, but he also made plenty of bad plays. Zach Wilson did, and he took some
against future Viking Peyton Turner, yeah,
exactly, or future Buccaneer. We'll see. I mean, both could be possible. But no, I think to me that's the big that's a whole discussion because Fields clearly, I thought, especially because he got better over the years. Now I think Wilson got better, but from what, he wasn't even on the radar really going in. I mean, he was good at his first year at BYU, but then last year struggled with injuries. And so I think the biggest difference for me is that Fields, I think, has shown that he can speed things up when he needs to, get through progressions when he needs to. There definitely needs to become more consistent. Whereas Wilson, I don't know that he has shown it much at all. He takes a long time to come off of things if they're not there. And a lot of times he throws it even when it's not there, and he throws up jump balls, and his guys made plays. And he threw the ball accurately. That's the thing that gives you a lot of hope with Wilson. but I still get concerned that the process isn't going to bear itself out in the NFL. People said the same thing about Mahomes to a degree, and then it obviously worked out fine. Plus, he had a year to sit, and he definitely got a little bit smarter with his decision making. But at the same time, I don't think Wilson has Mahomes' physical talent. I know people like to compare the two. He does not have that kind of an arm.
Is Mahomes getting these kind of off-script quarterbacks more of a bonus than they should get?
There's some of that. There's some of that because you've already, I think there's been some personnel people in the NFL quoting about saying that he reminds them of Mahomes, and he can make plays outside of structure, but Zach Wilson is not going to throw darts on point, on time, off his back foot while backpedaling in the pocket. No one is going to do that other than Patrick Mahomes on a consistent basis. Like, that's what people got to understand. Like, Zach Wilson has a great deep ball, but he doesn't have premier, top-end, elite velocity on intermediate throws. He does not have that, where Mahomes has all of it. His arm is, and he can do it from every angle.
And it's an integral part of Mahomes' game. Like, you can't just be like Mahomes with a lesser arm. That's not a Mahomes.
Right. I don't think it is. So
I feel like the most extreme example of this had to have been with Percy Harvin after 2011. The Tavon Austins, the Cordero Pattersons, later Randall Cobb. Feels like people were trying to get the next Percy Harvin. And like Percy Harvin couldn't even be the next Percy Harvin. That play style was unsustainable. Like,
right.
Which is a little bit different, right? Because with the quarterback, they get to control the game, whereas with the receiver, the game has to be kind of defined for them. Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like this happens a lot at a lot of positions where a particular player is so unique in the way that they play, and then you're like looking for a reminder of that player. Like a lot of Richard Shermans got drafted after 2013, and like Stanley Jean-Baptiste is not in the league anymore, right? Like. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of 6'2", 32-inch arms, 4'5'7" guys that didn't make it for whatever reason. I don't know, man. How does because obviously you want to take a look at what works in the modern NFL and replicate it, right. But like how do you determine when it's too much?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the tricky things about chasing prototypes, like the new type of quarterback that's winning, the new type of this, that's winning. Like, where is the point where it starts to, eat itself, basically? Like, it's not quite where you need it to be in other key areas to get the balance you need to, like, everybody wants to find athleticism in the quarterback nowadays. Okay, well, what's the drop off point, where you're sacrificing too much in the passing department and you're promoting the running ability too much, and so I think teams are searching for that. I don't think they found it yet, though. I mean, I think some teams were scared that was going to be Lamar Jackson, and that's not been the case with Lamar Jackson. He's been plenty good enough as a passer. You could argue what the ceiling is with him as a passer, but I mean, look, he's gotten you deep into the playoffs a couple times. So I mean, I think that teams are still trying to figure that out, but.
Better than having Willie Snead back there, I guess.
That was a great moment. Better than having Willie Snead back there for sure. But it's like that at all positions. Like, people, you mentioned Stanley Jean-Baptiste, and there have been other. Oh, I remember Lonnie Johnson. Remember him? Like, tested great. He's big. He talks all kinds of crap all the time. Okay, well, he's just not good. Like, and I think it was you saying earlier, like you could just be big and fast and athletic and basically talk crap at corner, and you could probably get drafted high. Like, you don't have to necessarily be good to be drafted high at that position. And so teams have, I think, figured that one out a little bit based on where some other bigger corners have gone. There's always exceptions to the rule the last couple of years, but maybe.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how Mukuamu does, right?
Right. And remember, I mean, Denzel Mukuamu is one of the examples, but then remember Denzel Ward and still went like top 5, and he was like this, everybody was like, man, we're been moving away from this type of corner, and then he still went high. So it was like, okay, well, maybe the league's not totally out. Maybe athleticism still, with tape still matters a little bit more to some teams. And so that's a position that I think we've maybe seen that a little bit, and now we're coming back to the middle ground. And it seems like it's worked pretty well, by the way. There's a lot of, I think, first-round corner hit rate has been pretty good, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, it's there's going to be that conversation with a lot. I remember a couple of years ago, it was like, oh, smaller wide receivers, man, they can just get open. Like, and everybody was like, oh, man, all these big wide receivers are bad. Well, if you pick the bad big wide receivers, they are, but they're good big wide receivers too. We just didn't have a lot of them for a few years in a row. It's not that all big receivers are bad, So understanding that and being able to look at it pretty nuanced, I think is definitely the key to doing it. But it is different at every position. It requires a lot of attention to detail.
All right, so you cover the Buccaneers. What are they going to do? I mean, obviously, what they're going to do is going to be really contingent upon what happens at the rest of the draft, because that's what happens when you win the Super Bowl. But what do you think their plans are at this spot?
I don't think they have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the smartest, actually. Yeah,
they have scenarios. But I think the biggest thing for them is they want to draft the best player available, and they really didn't want to leave themselves with a lot of holes. So they
just re-signed all their starters and then signed Gio Bernard.
Basically, yes. Like that was so funny that they signed Gio Bernard, because I was literally like, the one thing that I feel like they actually still need is a running back they can rely on third down, like, or in long and late situations, late
or
in the
at
game.
all.
Yeah, like, or at all. Yes, I mean that's. In the passing game, yes. I mean, that's so I thought that was like the one thing, and I'm not saying it's the most valuable thing in the world, but it would help a lot. So the fact that they filled that with one of the best pass protecting backs in the NFL throughout his career and a very good receiving back is very encouraging to me. It tells me they're also probably not going to go running back in the first round. So I would take.
Would they draft the 6th quarterback of the first round?
I don't think they will. No. If I were them, and I can't speak to totally what they will do, I don't think they will draft a quarterback in the first round. I would bet a lot of money they would not draft a quarterback in the first round. I could see them drafting, if Kyle Trask is there in round 4, I could see that being the case. Maybe even the end of round 3 wouldn't shock me. Yeah, okay. Dane told me he thinks Kyle Trask will be there in round 4. Will be available. Maybe not for the Bucs, but he think will be a 4th round pick.
I could see some team taking him in the 2nd round.
Yeah,
I would not personally take him in the 2nd round, but
yeah.
I could see a team doing it.
Right. I mean, so they could very well draft a running back, by the way, but I just don't think it's going to happen in the first round. So, in my opinion, you take quarterback and running back, tight end, because no tight end after Pitts is worth the pick there. You take tackle off the board for them. You could still take a tackle that converts to a guard, but Jenkins is going to be gone. Vera Tucker is going to be gone. There might not be many great options for that. But
who is your sixth quarterback?
Mine?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Mills, but I don't really feel that great about him.
Wow.
I love Mons Peaks, but it's just too hard for me. Like, we've been waiting forever. It just feels like we would have seen more consistency at this point if he were going to be good. I'm very much, if you don't take a quarterback early and you need a future starter, don't take one, because the chances of one of those guys becoming a franchise guy, they already have. I mean, once Blaine Gabbert comes back, if he ever resigns, they'll have a backup. I don't know that anybody.
Yeah, ride or die Blaine Gabbert.
I mean, I don't get it, but I mean, he was actually fine last year with the few moments we got. But Brady gets hurt, it's over anyway. Let's just, I mean, that
right.
I don't think anybody they can take at 32 or sign a free agency or anything is going to change that fact. So I would, just address other positions. But yeah, I would think that Mills and Mond and Trask could all be guys that I could see. Now, Trask is the opposite of upside. And Bruce Arians mentioned at 32 at least, quarterback, if they were going to take quarterback, it would be upside based. That would be a huge part of it. I mean, he has no upside at all. He's completely capped out physically, athletically, in terms of his ability to throw the football. You've seen it all. Like, all his limitations.
Mond is an interesting argument for upside, though, right? Because he's got an arm, but like he doesn't like throw to the outside.
Right. He's really frustrating, because the moments that you see it are, oh my goodness, like. First 2 days of Senior Bowl practice, perfect example. I was just like, yeah, I'm done. Like, third day of the Senior Bowl, he's literally like, popping up in the pocket, sliding left, throwing, like, zipping passes in between in tight windows. I'm like, my goodness, you got to be kidding me. I'm back. Like, and then in the game, he made some throws. He made some plays. And so he's just an interesting player. I think he's always going to be that type of guy, though, that like comes in for a game and just like has this great, and people are like, oh, Kellen Mond, let's go. And then he's just going to like completely just crap the bed in the next game. And you're going to be like, all right, like, I think that's just his career. He's destined to never be that consistent. He's fun, exciting, but never that consistent. Mills is probably the one that the Bucs would probably have their eyes on the most, I would guess. But
God, he's boring.
Yeah, he's extremely boring. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not really that. So I think at 32, my guess would be no quarterback, no running back, no tight end, no tackle, no defensive tackle. This class is terrible. Barmore's going to be off the board, thankfully. And
what about Davion Nixon? Don't they have to? How long is Vita Vea still on contract?
Yeah, Vita Vea is good. Yeah, they'll pick up his option, so he'll be around for a couple more years. He'll have 2 more years on that contract, and then
Okay, then never mind
yeah,
about
yeah, so he'll be fine. But they do need a defensive tackle for sure. If there was a good one, they would take it. They could take a first round. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And they have Sue and Golston both in the last year of their contracts, and Raheem Nunez-Roches is their top backup. He's always been a career.
Yeah,
backup,
it's just Nixon to me strikes me as like, I know he played a lot of 3 at Iowa, but he strikes me as a guy that you want at the nose. So yeah,
I mean, he could. I think he could play 3, and schematically, I don't think he'd not fit the box. I think it's too early for him, and I don't know that they're super interested. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of inconsistency with him, and I think teams are kind of doing the vetting process with him too. And so, I think that they maybe later in the draft, but in first round, I think D tackle's out. I think linebackers out just because. It's hard to justify it. You have Devin White and Levante David; they literally play every snap unless they get hurt. And if they get hurt, you have Kevin Minter, who they really, really like as the top backup, who played well last year when he was called upon. So maybe
they've got a really exciting group of cornerbacks too.
They do, yep. And I think in the inside, maybe I still think Greg Newsome, if he's there on the board, could be a fit for them. They like.
What about Asante Samuel? Let Winfield just play safety.
It's possible. I mean, Winfield pretty much just played safety last year. I think. I mean, he could. I hope he kicks down more this year. Toward the end of the year, they start doing some of that. It's hard for them because they want to keep Jordan Whitehead where he's at his best, which is very much just in a strong safety role. They don't want him to have to play single high or match up in the slot and man coverage. So he's kind of like, but he's great at what he does. It's just limited what he does. So
well, actually, here's a really good question. Better go for Tyler Johnson, Antoine Winfield, Rashad Bateman, or Benjamin St-Juste.
Oh my, Benjamin St-Juste.
Yeah, I know that last one's real tough, huh?
Okay, so you said better when they were at Minnesota?
No.
Or now?
Yeah, and you get the knowledge of how Antoine Winfield and Tyler Johnson have played.
Oh, right. I still think Antoine Winfield, yeah. I mean, I like Rashad Bateman for sure. I don't know that I see the special. Some people see a special player when they watch him. That's how they've graded him. I don't get that vibe when I watch him. I think he's good. He's one of those guys that, second round. Yeah, absolutely. That's the grade at it. Now I only have 13, 14 first round grade, something like that. But so it's not saying he shouldn't be a first round pick. I don't see a special type of player when I watch him. I think he's a good player for sure, but he is not a guy to me that's like, oh, you're going to run your offense through him. Like he's your number one guy. In the moment you need a play at any level of the field, any route, he's your guy. Like that, I see Jamar Chase like that. I think Jalen Waddle can become so impactful in the vertical game that it'll open up other things for him.
You live in Florida, right? I'm going to find you.
What's that?
I can't believe you said that about Bateman, man.
I think he's good.
I'll find you.
Look, man, I'm probably the only dude on the face of the earth who said the Bucs are going to take Tyler Johnson before day 3 started of the draft. Said Bucs are going to take Tyler Johnson. He's going to.
Yeah, you cursed him. You put him on a roster that had like 8 receivers already, man.
I know,
let him shine.
Well, AB wasn't there at the time, and I had no clue what Scotty Miller was to become. I actually wrote that Tyler Johnson would win the wide receiver 3 job, and if AB hadn't come around, he might have. I mean, he was out snapping Scotty in some games near the end of the year when AB was either out of the lineup or just as the 4th guy. So we'll see what this next year brings. But Winfield is the best to me, yeah, for sure.
All right. I can't hate picking Winfield, but the way that you talked about Bateman, man, I don't know.
Where do you have him as your wide receiver? Do you have him like
wide receiver 1 ahead of Jamar Chase? Come on, man.
Oh, gosh. Can't get on board with that. That sounds like a biased take to me. I don't know.
I don't know where you're getting this, dude. He should have won the Batemanikoff. Come on.
Batemanikoff. So you think he's a better NFL player than Tyler Johnson?
Johnson got screwed, man. I don't know what happened. I mean in the draft process, not by the Bucs. I think it is maybe fair to not play Tyler Johnson ahead of Mike Evans. Probably fair.
Yeah, probably. But he is going to be good, and he's in the right place for his career long term, I think, especially if AB doesn't come back.
But like, man, he should have been picked by the 3rd round. That was wild to me.
I was stunned. I think the Bucs were stunned too.
I mean, Bateman is a better overall because you could just ask him to do more. But
right, agreed.
Man, that's probably the best that Minnesota's going to produce for a bit. So I'm living it. Yeah. You're not supposed to agree, dude. Come on, man.
It's pretty obvious. I think you're right. I always keep it honest.
I told you I was going to keep you for half an hour. That was a lie.
Yeah, you pretty much screwed me over, but that's okay. I'm just kidding.
There's like an important call that you're waiting on. I don't know. But before you go, I just need just give me a quick, how many picks does Minnesota have in the third round? I was going to ask for a 2-round mock draft. I don't have any second-round picks.
Yeah, I cover the Bucks, man. I don't know.
No, I'll figure out what picks I have, and then you're going to give me a mock draft.
A mock draft?
Yeah, just real quick.
Totally.
Sure, they've got pick 14. They've got pick. Let's see what we got. 78 and 90. All right, give me a 3-round mock draft with picks 14, 78, and 90.
Oh my gosh!
You're right about the draft, man. Come on, you should be able to do this.
All right, Jalen Phillips.
All right.
He's gosh, this offensive line class. Okay, let's just skip the offensive line class.
Dude, we spent like an hour talking about the offensive line.
Paulson Adebo in one of those 2 rounds. I know. I'm not thinking of who. I'm trying to think of who they take, not who's available.
Okay.
Let's say Dylan Raduns in round. Yeah, Dylan Raduns in round 2. Paulson Adebo in round 3. There you go.
God, that hurts me. That I'm an NDSU guy.
I'm not even that big on Raduns. You
just wanted to hurt me.
Yeah, I just said his name. Yeah, that's right. Our North Dakota State guy. Yeah, definitely Raduns. Definitely Raduns. They trade up for Trey Lance. They trade the rest of their draft for Trey Lance.
I mean, it would make for good content. I'll say that.
It would.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on. There's like 8 million other things that I wanted to ask you, but I just kept interrupting what you were trying to say with new questions. So we'll have to get you back on again, man.
I've been on worse. But thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
John Ledyard. I didn't screw it up. There's not another Bucks publication that you actually work for, and I just said Pewter Report. It's actually Pewter Report.
You caught it, Pewter Report. Yeah.
Okay, cool. He works with the much more talented, but maybe soon to be single Trevor Sycamore. based on what's happening in this group chat right now, and probably some other talented people over at Pewter Report as well, too, right?
Well, Trevor hasn't been at Pewter Report for 2 years.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah, he's with the Panthers or something.
I'm 100% telling him you said that.
That's fine. Tell him in the chat right now. So he's Panthers podcast guy.
Yeah, he works for Panthers Report.
Panthers Report. Works for the Draft Network. I think he's on Locked On, right?
Yeah, that seems right.
Do you have a podcast?
Yeah, Pewter Report podcast. 4 days a week we go live. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Listen to John on the Pewter Report podcast.
All right, Norse code.
Head over to pewterreport.com where, in theory, he'll post a big board at some point. Dude, I don't.
The last day before, 4 hours before the first round.
I'll find you. You said Florida. I'll find you.
Weather's great. Beats Minnesota.
And what is it? At Ledyard NFL?
You got at Ledyard NFL draft.
Oh, draft. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we were talking about the draft. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Big draft guy hasn't watched Trey Lance. At Ledyard NFL draft.
I can't change my handle or they'll take away the check mark, and the check mark is dopamine, and I need it. I need it.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Anytime.
All right. Well, there is something else to talk about for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's not pretty. And this involves Jeff Gladney, cornerback from last year, who did really well on the field, but off the field has had a number of issues relating to an April 2nd arrest. The details are not pretty. This is something that happened about 2 weeks ago, so apologize we're getting around to it now, but this is important Vikings news. That he turned himself into a Dallas County jail, posted $10,000 bond on the charge of third-degree felony, family violence, and assault. This is not exactly the sort of thing you want to see from a rising cornerback star on your team.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really any other way to put it. The allegations are troubling and disturbing, and the level of detail in the allegations and the police report are, individually fairly disturbing. I don't want to like go into like graphic detail or describe it word for word what happened, but it looks obviously quite bad. And from the perspective of like, humans, obviously you're just kind of sad that this happened. You don't want this sort of thing to happen. And you hope the best for the victim. From the perspective of like the standpoint of the podcast, which is that it covers the team, obviously this puts the team in a difficult spot because they have no idea kind of how this is going to continue going forward. The Vikings are not in the most difficult offseason they've ever had, but they are in a very unusual one because the Vikings have been more involved in social justice issues this year and the past year than they have been, throughout the franchise's history, at least as an organization, aside from the individual players. And then in the middle of that, you've got, your first round pick accused of something like this, and you don't know how that process is going to play out. It puts them in a pretty tough situation from the perspective of them being able to do their jobs. And then in terms of the way that you kind of navigate it from a personnel perspective, very likely the Vikings are going to take the lead from the NFL, and they're going to wait on the legal process to play out. That doesn't mean that if Gladney is found not guilty, that he'll not miss any time. There's a really good chance that he ends up kind of like Adrian Peterson on the exempt list, or ends up suspended. Even if he's found not guilty. The NFL tends to use a rule kind of closer to the way civil suits are decided, which is essentially a preponderance of evidence standard. Or I'm not a lawyer, I don't know what the exact phrasing is, but essentially, if there's a 51% chance that you did what you were accused of, the NFL is more likely to levy a punishment, whereas obviously the criminal justice system is beyond a reasonable doubt. And by that standard, there's a decent chance that they'll suspend Gladney for some indeterminate number of games. I know that there's a very specific policy that lays out kind of what the suspension schedule is, but it doesn't really ever seem like the NFL follows that policy in a predictable way. So I'm not going to attempt to predict what they would do. But that would mean that the Vikings could be, if he's on the exempt list, left without this cornerback for an entire year, and that changes their kind of priorities in the draft. We talked about that a little bit with Ledyard. And we talked about corners, especially in the first round, that might fit. We talked about a couple of corners kind of later on that might fit. And cornerback was kind of already a need for the Vikings. They needed to add depth, and now they need to be a little bit more aggressive about finding a cornerback because you've got three cornerbacks that are going to hit free agency next year, and Patrick Peterson, Mackenzie Alexander, and Mike Hughes, because the Vikings did not pick up Mike Hughes' fifth-year option. And you're going to need to be able to find, somebody to kind of fill in there. And now you need to find somebody that might need to play right away or operate as depth for Gladney. So obviously this creates another kind of, positional roster trouble for them in a season where they've already got a lot of, questions about who they're going to have on the roster. And obviously those questions are kind of secondary to kind of the human impact of that. But from the perspective of what the organization needs to do or how this changes their short-term plans, it creates, a potential hole in the roster that they're going to want to fill.
Yeah, it's certainly not a pretty situation, or one that the Vikings or Jeff Gladney or his girlfriend wanted to be a part of. So it's rough. But when we have an update on this, we will definitely be bringing it to you on North Code. But we will go into the mailbag now because we have plenty of draft stuff to talk about. Alex asks, what are the odds the Vikings trade down? Does not having a second impact their decision a lot?
So I think before this last week, I would have said the odds are maybe 50% that they trade down, maybe a little bit higher. Now it feels like they're probably not going to trade down. And this is just more a product of me hearing like fourth, fifth hand stuff about kind of, they kind of like their options at 14 sort of thing. So it's not very good or reliable or rock solid reporting or anything like that. But it feels like maybe they're kind of more willing to take a pick at 14. Obviously, like I just mentioned, the priorities positionally might have changed. So if, for example, an elite player or the player at the top of their position group, say someone like a Patrick Surtain, if that's your guy. Ledyard said that, for example, that J.C. Horn is his guy. Um, obviously Sewell or Slater. Maybe they find one edge rusher to be better than the rest of the edge rushing class. Who knows? But yeah, if they find kind of a top player at a position group, they might just take that guy at 14. So it feels less likely than it did a couple of weeks ago that they would trade down, and that they might instead decide to get into the second. And I do think they want to get into the second round. They might instead get into the second round by trading up from the third. And if they do that, it's not going to be tough for them to be able to still, make sure that they get 10 picks, because, I remember they traded 3 picks to get Cordell Patterson in 2013. They still had 10 picks in that draft. It helped having an extra first, but they didn't trade that extra first for anything. So, I think they'll find a way to get those 10 picks and still be able to trade up into the second round. So I think that's what's going to happen. Who knows? The day before the draft, the wind could be blowing another way.
Day before the draft, there could be a new number 2, and teams just completely destroying all the mock drafts that have been done in the weeks prior.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe Zach Wilson puts on a gas mask bong. I don't know. Who knows?
Anything is possible. Things can happen for like literally no reason. It's fantastic. Dave Granger asks, assuming the Vikings are committed to picking up a second rounder, would it generally be more valuable to trade down in the first to pick one up, or stay at 14 and use later picks to move into the second?
Generally, it'd be more valuable to trade down. And this is both a product of kind of the logic of trading down is just generally better. And the reason that trading down is better is not necessarily that the pure value of like the 14th ranked player versus, the, 60th plus 24th ranked player, whatever, right? It's not that the pure value of the 14th ranked player versus the 20th plus 60th ranked player is lower. It's because NFL teams are not 100% confident or they shouldn't be 100% confident in their evaluation decisions. And so if they were guaranteed to get the 14th best player at the 14th pick, or better, obviously, that might change the equation, but they're not. So in the face of uncertainty, it's better to use your high value stuff to acquire more shots in high value parts of the draft, which here is in the second and third round. So it's better to trade down. That said, if it was like a clean evaluation, like Quentin Nelson, which it's not because that guy went 6th, right? Like for a reason, at like one of the least valuable positions in the draft, he still went 6th overall. But if it was a clean evaluation, like, Quentin Nelson, then you would be a little bit more comfortable with number 14. But you got to be careful when you make exceptions like that, because there's all kinds of players that are really safe that turn out not to be very good. Like Aaron Curry, for example, is a really good one. Trent Richardson's another one. Like, super clean evaluation, rock solid, very likely to do something, and then, nothing, right? So, generally speaking, the reason it's better to trade down is because of uncertainty and less because of the value of getting like the 13th best or 14th best player. But yeah, I think it's better just because missing on that first round pick is pretty catastrophic, and there's like a 40% chance that you do that. Whereas missing on a second round pick is not as bad if you get an extra third round pick to be able to take another shot. So, I would say it's better to trade down. It feels more like that they're going to trade up.
Next question is from Raul, who asks, Sewell and Slater are off the board. Take your pick. Next best consensus offensive tackle, Darrisaw, versus best offensive guard, Vera Tucker, versus Ubermensch athlete, Cosme.
Yeah, so I've mentioned in a couple of pieces now that Samuel Cosme is one of the best athletic testers that in the last kind of 5-7 years at tackle. It's like Tristan Wirfs and then him, and his testing numbers are just phenomenal. I do want to kind of caution that the last Texas super athlete tackle that I really liked, who went 50th overall to the Cowboys, Connor Williams, has had kind of a mediocre career. But when you run his numbers as a guard, he looks like an average-ish guard. So his athleticism, from a testing perspective, very much fit tackle. So I don't really see that as a huge loss, but it is kind of a concern, right? Because as Ledyard mentioned, none of these guys really look like your 6'5", 35-inch arm tackles. But yeah, I mean, I like him a lot, but if the NFL values him around like the 24th pick or whatever, and no one really sees him as the 14th overall pick, I'm not going to say that just because his PFF numbers are good and his athletic testing is good that he should actually just be the 14th pick. I think the NFL is probably closer to right on that one. And so I would say it's, I don't know. Ledyard made a real good case for Vera Tucker, and he was pretty lukewarm on Darrisaw. And the way that he described the two of them, and the way that he described the way that Vera Tucker could change things at guard versus the way that Darrisaw could patch holes at tackle, it makes it very difficult for me to say, yeah, you got to take Darrisaw because of positional value, right? If I'm forced to pick and I don't get to trade down, and that's what I would do in this situation where your really only option might be Vera Tucker, I would trade down. But if I'm not and I had to pick here, I would still probably take Darrisaw. I think that if he is valued by the NFL as a better tackle than Cosme, I'm not going to let the athleticism thing kind of get in my way. And I just think that having a pretty good tackle is better than having a pretty good guard. Vera Tucker seems to be a much more interesting / rock solid evaluation at guard. But, if it's not a Quentin Nelson type, and I've kind of changed my tune on the Colts drafting Quentin Nelson, I think based off of the PFF data and the way that they do wins above replacement, it actually turns out the Colts, despite picking against PFF's recommendations, end up with a PFF approved pick overall. I don't think that Vera Tucker's like that. I don't think it's as obvious. So I would probably say I would rather swing for a tackle, and that would be Darrisaw. But it is tougher after what Ledyard said, but I still think that the positional value question here is important, and that the broad NFL evaluation that Darrisaw is probably better than Cosme is important as well.
Next question is from Ian Pauly, who asks, what are both of your bold predictions for the first didn't see that coming pick, and what round do you think it will happen? Specialists in the 5th are banned as choices.
Sometimes when I gather these big boards, I'm like, hey, so you don't have this kicker ranked or this kicker ranked or this punter ranked, and they're in a lot of top 300s, and in your top 300 you don't have them. Is that intentional, or did you forget about them when they were? And sometimes they're just like, man, screw you, Arif. I'm not going to rank a kicker. Like, okay, man, you didn't have to be so mean about it. But yeah, the kickers aren't really entering. Like, the only punter I can think of right now is Presley Harvin III, and that's because I've had to enter his name so many times, because some people enter him as Presley Harvin and some people enter him as Presley Harvin III, so it creates a data problem. And then, of course, his last name is Harvin, so it's very easy to remember. But I don't know if he's any good. I think he's from Kentucky. I don't know. He's a punter. I didn't see that coming pick. I think the thing that we discussed in the interview of Jason Owe maybe falling a little bit more than the media thinks. They have him as like 28 or whatever as an edge rusher. There's a lot of edge rushers that could go in the first round. And I think a guy with like no sacks last year, I think he could fall. I don't think that would be shocking. So I think it's Jason Owe. He has really great testing numbers for an edge rusher. So there's always going to be some team that takes a chance on him. But, I think that there's enough on film for you to say that you can't give him all the excuses in the world for missing those sacks. I think that's an actual concern. And I think he falls out of the first round. I wouldn't even be shocked if he fell out of the second round, which obviously would be very good for the Vikings, because he seems kind of like, if you can find your Daniil Hunter arbitrage opportunity, that would be it.
I've done exactly 5 minutes worth of research on this question.
All right,
and I feel compelled to share my opinion on the internet, because that's kind of how that works. Basing on everything I know about the draft and teams, I'm going to say that Chicago trades up in the first round and has an incredibly stupid decision.
Oh, that's fun. I like that. So they could even trade with Minnesota.
They could. I think that the Bears end up trading up and grabbing a tight end. I'm not necessarily thinking that it's going to be Kyle Pitts, but I think they trade up for a tight end.
They trade up to 13 for Pat Freiermuth.
Yep.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
And everybody, and we get to have last year, we all had fun poking fun at the Packers for what they had done for their trade, and this year we all get to point and laugh at the Bears. So that is my prediction. Now, on draft day, if the Bears do end up trading up for anything, I fully expect I fully expect my Twitter timeline to explode. So please,
Incredible. I love it.
I'm just saying, Pat Fryermuth at 14 at 12. We'll see. That could be interesting. He has an ability to cross the as a tight end. He has an ability to cross the goal line, and that is something they've been lacking over the years. So they've had tight ends who like to be tackled at the one. So we'll see. Also from Ian Pauly, given it's about to be grilling season again, what new grilling recipe have you tried / are you looking forward to trying?
So James probably has thought about this a little bit more than I have, because I looked at that and I was like, grilling recipe, just put some meat on the grill. Who cares? But the one thing that I really loved, and of course I learned it from Alton Brown, is so porterhouse is not a particularly great steak to attempt to cook, because you're cutting two different cuts, or you're cooking two different cuts that essentially should probably be cooked in different ways. One's a tenderloin and one's a New York strip. And you can it's not super easy to necessarily handle and produce the two sides or the two pieces of meat really well. But one thing that I did do a couple years ago that I want to try again is to, instead of cooking it with the grill necessarily, cooking it with the charcoal chimney fire starter, because it can get like 1,000 degrees coming out from the bottom of the chimney. So you load it up with charcoal, and you do the normal thing where you put like newspaper soaked in a little bit of oil underneath, get that started. And when the charcoal is like good and hot and the newspaper is like kind of all crumbled away, you pick up the chimney and you put the porterhouse on the grill, which has been warmed up because the chimney's on it, right? Warmed up, it's hot. And then you put the chimney right on top of the porterhouse, and that 1,000 degrees is blasting down on top, and it's like a salamander at a restaurant. And you get just incredible browning. And it's I mean, you should like brush the steak with oil and salt and all that before you do that. But you get incredible browning, an incredible sear. You have to have a pretty good feel for what you think your doneness feels like, which means you're going to have to probably cook a lot of porterhouses before this is super viable. But that's a sacrifice I think a lot of people are willing to make.
Nothing expensive to start anyway. Yeah,
yeah.
You're like 2 minutes on each side. All right, we're good.
Yeah, but yeah, it's insane. It's delicious. Throw a pat of butter on it at the very end. Make sure you don't burn it. And you end up with just an incredible steak. And like, I think tenderloin's kind of like the filet mignon. I think that's like kind of overrated. But you do it like this, and I think you're just going to end up being happy.
So I was looking at different types of brines for chicken the other day, and I want to do more with full on marinating of like chicken breast and everything this year. I think I want to kind of try to do that. But one thing I have looked into is, I have an offset smoker. I don't have an outside oven. So one thing that you can do with an offset is you can toss like an onion onto the fire as well, and just have it kind of roast there for the scent and for the type of smoke into that. So I want to mess around a little bit with that. I did it a little bit at the very end of last year, and I liked the result of tossing an onion on while I was smoking a pork butt. So I'm intrigued to potentially continue that. But the porterhouse idea is kind of interesting because it also is kind of a play on the Alton Brown recipe for just putting a skirt steak on a bunch of coals, just flat on the coals,
which is a great recipe. I've done that too. It's great.
Yeah, I messed with that shortly after I ended up getting a chimney and was like, I'm just curious, and it was quite good. Let's go to Jack, who asks, is there one or more of the top 5 QBs you would not take at 14 if available? Let's assume that your top tackles and cornerbacks are still on the board, unlikely as that may be.
All right, setting aside the bit about NDSU and the fact that there's a safety in the draft that's being called a quarterback, no, I would take any of them at 14. Honestly, it's a quarterback. Quarterback's the most important thing you can have. A cost-controlled quarterback would be great to have. The Vikings are locked into Kirk Cousins. Fine. You very rarely draft a first-round quarterback and make them sit for like 2 years. Obviously, you can always go back to like the example of Rodgers, but like that's pretty rare. A lot of these quarterbacks will find a way to start even if you've got a pretty good starter. So maybe you get to trade Kirk Cousins and recoup those losses there. But I just think that any opportunity that you can have to upgrade a quarterback and you feel like you've got like a decent chance of doing it, you should probably take it if it doesn't like destroy your cap space, which it wouldn't here. So no, there's not a quarterback among those top 5 that I think it would be a bad idea to draft at 14. And if Cousins can't like handle a dude behind him that's trying to take his job, I mean, then he's done for anyway, right? Then you've got a Carson Wentz. So no, I would take a quarterback there. And Ledyard even said he thinks it's a good idea too. Like I think that this is something that people are fine with, but just don't expect to happen. And I don't think the chance here, by the way, is 0. I think that there is a chance.
Next question is from Stezo, who asks, looking at the wide receivers that Keenan McCardell helped develop at the Jaguars, who would be a good day 3 target for the Vikings? To what extent do they also meet the Vikings' athletic thresholds?
So this is kind of interesting. So he's developed a bunch of different types of receivers. So he helped develop Stephon Diggs at Maryland. That was kind of a big thing. But he was also involved with D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark and Keelan Cole, and they're kind of different. Obviously, when they brought in a couple of receivers like Laviska Shenault and Chris Conley, different kinds of receivers, all of them. And so I don't know that there's necessarily a type that you gun for. I don't think he's worked like a pure deep threat. So if you want to say you wanted to avoid that, because he doesn't have a history with that, maybe, but I wouldn't care too much about type. Obviously a lot of these guys are smaller and a lot of them have improved in their route running a little bit more, but it's not as if this is kind of like a universal rule. So, I think that you could take a look at any of these guys that could end up getting drafted a little bit later and think about them as potential Vikings. So if you're thinking about second round guys, maybe Diami Brown from North Carolina, it really depends what this group is going to do at the bottom of the first round. So Rashad Bateman might go in the first round. Terrace Marshall Jr. from LSU might go in the first round. Rondale Moore might go in the first round. Who knows? But I think one of them won't. I don't know which one it's going to be. And that person could fall to within striking distance of the Vikings in the second round should they acquire a second round pick. And I think all of those, would be great. Rondale Moore is the most fun to watch out of all of them. Rashad Bateman is a really great route runner, and obviously he's got the Minnesota connection. And then Terrace Marshall Jr., I think, obviously, pairing him up with another LSU guy at receiver would be a ton of fun. But he's just generally a very, very good receiver. And having someone with like maybe the explosiveness of Moore would be fun. Otherwise, like I said, Diami Brown is a very physical receiver. He'd be kind of fun to have. Nico Collins is another super athlete. That'd be great to have. These are all guys second, third round. I like Dwayne Eskridge. I actually didn't think Dwayne Eskridge met the Vikings' athletic thresholds, but I took a second look and it turns out he does. He's pretty fast and he's a good route runner. And it's hard to find guys that are both fast and good route runners in like the third round. And it sounds like that's where he's going to go. He's got some return experience, so he could help the Vikings there. But if you're taking a look at some of these guys late, and I've got an article with all of the wide receivers that are ranked in Dan Brugler's top 25 wide receivers. I've got an article that has all of the ones that fit the Vikings threshold. So the ones that I kind of like as returners are Anthony Schwartz from Auburn, who is the fastest player in college football. I mean, a lot of people said it was Jalen Waddle, and hey, he's got a great argument. But Anthony Schwartz, is literally an Olympic qualifier. Like he has Olympic level speed. He was on the 4x100 gold medal team for the IAAF World Championships, a silver medal 100 meter in Finland. And he could have gone to the Olympic trials, but because of injury and he wanted to focus on football, he goes back to football. And he, a lot of these receivers only have straight line speed if they're super speed guys. And he's got a lot of agility and he's got a lot of ability to maintain his speed through his cuts. Now, obviously, he's not a super polished receiver. Otherwise, he would not be Brugler's 21st ranked receiver. And he doesn't have a great build or anything like that. He's basically Cameron Dantzler, but on offense and fast. But he's just got all kinds of potential. If you can get the fastest guy in football, if you've got a guy that may be faster than Tyreek Hill, that's an asset that'd be kind of fun to use. So I think that he's an interesting guy. He's also an explosive return, no surprise there. But there's a bunch of returners in this year's draft that are like pretty good. But yeah, those are guys that I'm thinking about. Seth Williams from Auburn, is another potential example. But yeah, I think all of these guys look like potential fits. I'll link the article about the guys that fit the Vikings kind of history at the position.
Next question is from Moldy, who asks, can you talk us into guard at 14, considering the positional value there? Saw the new mock, and I'm convinced AVT is good, but it's just hard to justify interior offensive line that early, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I could convince myself. I obviously I mocked him there, but it just is kind of part of the direction of that mock, where I wanted to make sure that I always had an option for the Vikings to pick somebody that matched their kind of workout thresholds. And I felt that in that mock, I had already experimented a bunch with trading down, so it would have been kind of boring to do it. So from a content perspective, I didn't do it. And then B, there were a bunch of edge rushers, but I didn't think that there would be tackles that are later on for the Vikings to be able to grab. So I just grabbed an offensive lineman in that mock. I'm not convinced it was necessarily the best idea. But the argument here is that if you draft a tackle, you are essentially figuring out your guard spot. Like no matter what position you draft, you are essentially determining the other spot, because Ezra Cleveland essentially will play the other spot. So if you draft a guard, Ezra Cleveland's playing tackle. If you draft a tackle, Ezra Cleveland's playing guard. And we don't know which one is going to be better at what. Like obviously a first round pick versus a second round pick, you expect the first round pick to be better, but you don't necessarily know that like the rookie is going to be better than the second year player or whatever. And we know that Ezra Cleveland is, I shouldn't say we know, to the extent that we know anything about these prospects, Ezra Cleveland is probably a better tackle than guard anyway. So if you draft a guard, you've essentially filled your tackle spot with the guy who kind of fits the position a little bit better at tackle. Whereas if you draft a tackle and you've got two tackles and one of them has to play guard, and you might be downgrading at one spot. So that's probably the argument, is that no matter what happens, you end up with a tackle and a guard. And your best solution is to get a guy that can play the positions, and so that you've got people playing their best positions, where AVT's playing guard and Ezra Cleveland's playing tackle or something along those lines. So that's probably the argument. Honestly, I think the counter argument to that is you want the best possible left tackle, period. They matter just a lot more than guards do. And so if you draft a guy that can play left tackle, you get to have a competition at that position. And that competition is just going to produce probably the best possible player you could get on your roster at left tackle. And then, the other guy is a guard, and maybe they're not as good, but you're in a spot where you've got maybe a floor in terms of the amount of value that you're going to get. So I think that's the counter argument. I'm not convinced that a guard at 14 is a great idea, but I also would not criticize the Vikings too much if they did it. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like it's pretty reasonable given their history that they would do it.
14 is just an odd spot.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Christopher Wiley asks, so by the improbable fiat of fate, Kwity Paye and Rashawn Slater are available at 14. Who does GM Arif take, and is it the same as GM Spielman?
I think Spielman takes Slater. I think I would take Paye, and I think Paye is projected to go a little bit lower, but like I don't know that there are a lot of athletes like Paye, and this is a super stacked draft for edge athletes, as John mentioned. Crazy good athletes. Like you've got Jalen Phillips and Jason Owa, and we mentioned Peyton Turner near the end too. He's a pretty good athlete. But you've got him like all throughout the draft. He mentioned Joe Tryon as potential third round pick, good athlete. And even then I would put Paye in a tier above, like the fact that he purportedly ran, and there's video evidence of him running a 6.37 3-cone, which is the fastest 3-cone of any player at any position, much less one that's 270 friggin' pounds. For the past like 10 years, I want to say. Like I think what the fastest was like 2006. I don't know, but like that is nuts to me. And he also had like a great like a 37 inch. He had a great vertical and explosion. He had a great 10-yard. He had a great 40-yard. Like he is just a super athlete that was pretty good at Michigan. I mean, he wasn't like Myles Garrett good or anything like that. But he was pretty good at Michigan. And if you get a super athlete that is, he's very coachable. If you get a super athlete that's very coachable in Andre Patterson's hands at a position that's just a little bit more valuable, that's just good things. That's great. And that he's got a lot of opportunity to create because Daniil Hunter's on the other side. And I think that if you can get a position where you're kind of setting the tone versus one where you have to kind of react to what's happening, so like cornerback or tackle or something like that, you can be a little bit more confident that they can be proactive and kind of control their own production a little bit more. So I probably take Kwity Paye. I think that he's a better athlete and at a position that's a little bit more valuable.
Chris asks, as a corollary, how many 7th-round picks could Rick get for a 14?
I mean, all of them from a points value perspective. Like, I don't know how you could construct that scenario, though. Like, you'd have to trade down like 80 times to make sure you get in contact with every team.
Like, I want all of them. I want the entire 7th round. What could possibly go wrong?
30 picks? I can't wait to write about that.
What are the NFL going to do to punish us? We're just taking the 7th round. You're just going to deal. David Rinaldi asks, Arif, I believe the Vikings are hot for Miami defensive end Russo. Fits the defensive end mold the Vikes look for. What draft position would be appropriate for them to take him at and not have the pick be considered a stretch, assuming there's a trade partner that would be interested in 14?
Yeah, I find this interesting because there was like a bunch of consensus that Rousseau was a great pick at 14. And he was drafted twice in Brugler's mock drafts to the Vikings. And I reached out to like Justice and a couple of other people that do defensive. I reached out to John as well that do defensive line work. And I was like, I don't really get this. I wasn't, as I hadn't watched as many prospects at that point, or any, I think the first time it happened, the first time Brugler mocked him, but I knew that Justice wasn't a huge fan. So I was like, I don't really understand this. Can you walk me through this? And nobody I talked to was very excited about the idea of him at 14. Like there was a bunch of media boards that had him, in like 15, 16, 14 range or whatever. And the Vikings, picking him as, kind of a matter of course. They didn't have any, edge rushers at the time. They hadn't cut Riley Reef or anything like that. So it made a lot of sense. And so based off of their conversations, I was not super enthused. And so I wrote like a less than enthusiastic piece over at The Athletic about this. But I agree with the question, which was like, he seems very Vikings-ish, which is not a great compliment to the Vikings, I guess, but it is very similar to, I think, some of the other things that they did, especially like DJ Wanham and Ade Aruna and, some of their, 4th and 7th round picks over the years where they love that. I mean, he's 6'7". He's got these long arms. He is relatively explosive. So he does really feel like the kind of defensive end they've been drafting the past couple of years. I think for him to not be kind of a stretch, you'd probably want to take him around, I don't know, like 26 or 25 or something like that. And I don't know who's interested. Like the Steelers almost never trade up. They did for like Devin Bush, but before and after, I don't think they've ever done that. I think the same might be true of the Ravens. So you'd have to find a team that's pretty willing to trade up. The Saints are always willing to trade up. So maybe you could talk to them, but
the Saints don't really believe in draft picks.
They really don't. They've been trading up since like Reggie Bush, right? So it's
entirely possible that this is all part of Mickey Loomis's plan to just eliminate the draft from their from everything they do every year.
Focus less on the draft and more on Netflix.
Yeah. Which we will talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I can't wait to hate it. But yeah, I think that you're right that Rousseau feels like a Vikings fit. I don't love that fit for the Vikings, but certainly it kind of matches a lot of what they've been looking for. And I'd say probably around the mid-20s would be probably a better spot for that to be valued.
Logan asks, what are NFTs and how will Norse Code capitalize on them to support the show? I think we're going to have to start selling Arif original tweets.
NFTs are you get a token. So you run a car for 3 years, just idling. And after that, you get a token that says this thing is yours, but you don't get to sell it. And you get to sell the token, but you don't get to sell the thing, and you don't get to authorize its use anywhere else. You don't own the copyright. And also you don't host it, like it's on someone else's web server. So if the host decides to go belly up, you don't have it anymore. but it costs a lot. So I understand it's very valuable, and it could power Europe for a day. I understand. So that seems great. I would love to power Europe for a day. That sounds like a supervillain power. I want that. So
That sounds like something you put inside of your Twitter bio.
yeah, so Norse Code will steal some of Drawplay Dave's artwork and tokenize it with an NFT, because I don't think anything, like, you can't like stop that from happening, right? So we'll just sell some of his artwork for him, and by for him I mean we'll keep the money. And by money I mean like the blockchain, the Ethereum, I guess.
Money in the ethereal sense of the word.
Right, and that's a smart contract, I think is what it's called, and we keep that, and then we sell it at a coin exchange, and then we get money. And when we sell it, we bankrupt Russia. I don't really know how any of this works.
I feel like at some point Norse Code launches Ness coin. Or Nessie, or like Nessie coin, and we just start mining for that, and then we all become internet billionaires.
Yeah, but as to be clear, only we will be hosting the Nessie coin. You will receive digital tokens saying that you own some Nessie coins, and you can exchange those tokens for goods and services like you would any other currency or commodity, I guess. But if we die, all the Nessie coins go away. So.
Yeah. And if you want to exchange it for something, I probably have some tokens or some tickets from Circus from Columbia Mall back in the 90s. I probably have some lying in a box somewhere.
Well, that's how we authorize them.
Yes, exactly. Also from Logan, as someone who gets into a lot of Twitter fights, recently the Jim Nagy / unconscious bias one.
It turns out most recently, friggin' Julian Edelman. So this question's already out of date, and it was asked this morning.
Right? What types of Twitter fights are there, and which is your favorite, Arif?
Not the unconscious bias one. I can tell you that.
And it can't be the Julian Edelman one, because that one's just that one just exists. To quote Peter Griffin when he was discussing why he'd never watched The Godfather, it insists upon itself. Like the Julian Edelman argument just insists upon itself.
It should be a super boring debate, right? Because like Edelman, is he even in the top 50 all time in receiving yards? Like, who is this guy? Like, why are we talking about this? It's dumb. It should not be a conversation, and so it's like weird that it is. So that's not an interesting debate. And then the one where I'm talking about racism and then I get accused 80 times of being the real racist. Like, that's not a fun Twitter fight. The fun Twitter fights are like after the game. Like if Kirk Cousins played like pretty poorly, but like everyone else played worse, so it's like hard to blame him. But I still feel the need to point out that, like, you know, he also didn't play all that well. Those are fun Twitter fights. Like, you know, if someone's like, yeah, but I mean, he had no time to throw. And it's like, well, he had a lot of time to throw when he like overthrew Adam Thielen by 30 yards and threw a pick. That sounds like, you know, a bad thing. He shouldn't do that. And then people are like, yeah, but he got hit on that throw. And it's like, yeah, a lot of quarterbacks get hit on a lot of throws. And an argument that goes...
A lot of guys' girlfriends are in this club, bud.
Yeah, right. It's just like, yeah, this argument's not going anywhere. But, you know, the more I tweet about it, the more I'm essentially writing my next article. So it's productive. It makes a lot of people very happy, I understand, when I do this. No, that's wrong. Pissed off. That's the word.
Well,
yeah.
The people who end up getting retweeted out of it, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Bomani Jones had a term he used to use for those types of Twitter arguments where he just referred to them as hater Galaga, where you were just going up and hitting it.
That's great. Yeah, those are my favorite fights.
Yeah. I forget if his hater Galaga account still exists, but he used to have one specifically just for hater Galaga stuff. Andrew Shad has an update for us. Recently, he had talked about potentially getting a second cat, and if this is a slippery slope to a third, I told him just have a kid, and he proceeded to get a second cat and followed Arif's instructions here. So for Arif's cat corner, we did end up getting a second cat, Moss and Penny now. Arif was right. They're quickly becoming best friends, and Moss's life is significantly better. Moss has gone the Kelvin Benjamin route recently, and we've been trying to limit his food intake. However, this has become difficult with two cats as they both eat from each bowl. How do I get Moss into wide receiver shape without starving our new cat?
This would be like a wonderful question for me to ask my actually qualified girlfriend on this one. But she is like crazy busy, and I'm not going to bother her with this right now. She's got like a thing she has to do, and she's got like an hour and a half as of this point in the recording to finish it. So you're going to get a made up answer from me. I guess, no, I can't even come up with I don't know how to answer this question.
Third cat. That's how you do it. You've already gone this far.
No, James, you just want to win the argument about cat expansion, so you're just recommending more cats so that you end up being right.
You might as well get the third cat because this is where your life is headed anyway. So just get the third cat. This will balance it out.
That doesn't solve Moss. Moss needs to get into playing shape.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what my parents did, and they fed them in two separate places, and they fed them with two separate bowls, and they had to shut a door in order to feed the cats successfully. So this takes a little bit more work in order to do it, and a little bit more vigilance. You can still have them drink out of the same water bowl, but you have to like separate them as far as feeding and make it so that ends up being something that they get used to. Because otherwise they're going to rebel, and rebellious cats are annoying. All cats are annoying, but rebellious ones especially. So that is what I have seen done. Really, just get yourself a third cat. The third cat will be the enforcer.
You're not solving the Moss thing.
I solved the Moss thing, and then I said get a third cat.
That's not even related to the advice.
Mm-hmm. Third cat will even it all out. That's how these things work. Now you have a friend. Now you need an enforcer.
Well, I mean, it's not like when Curtis Samuel showed up in Carolina, Kelvin Benjamin lost a lot of weight.
Ooh, that's because they needed a third wide receiver to balance it out.
But they already had DJ Moore. See, by the analogy presented by the question, you're wrong.
I'm not sure that wide receivers and cats really play well. This was set
together. Up by are you saying that the listener is wrong for asking the question?
I'm saying the listener was wrong for getting a second cat.
No, the listener. So I was obviously right to get the cats are happier, right?
Really?
The cats. He just said I was right, and he also says the cats are happier, and there are more. There's just a smaller additional.
I'm still gonna be right. I'm playing the long game on this one. We're gonna get an update.
Dude, if you get a third cat, dude, I'm gonna be so mad at you.
This is going to end up happening. I like how that actually involved real advice and threats from you. I can't wait for the end of the year.
I threatened John like 4 times. This is a very 4-word podcast episode.
This is Arif is getting his grievances out of the way today. Let's go to the Allen Robinson Liberation Front. Still a fantastic name on Twitter.
So good.
At long last, the weather is good enough to barbecue in my neck of the woods. I will be breaking out the egg for an in-person D&D session this coming Saturday. What recipes fit best for a D&D theme? Any large hunk of meat, really. Like
just a giant hunk of meat.
Yeah.
The tomahawk, I think, would be kind of a classic. I guess if you wanted like historical ideas, I'd recommend the Tasting History YouTube channel with Max Miller that has like a bunch of recipes from like different points in history. And obviously, because D&D is a historical fantasy setting, you could probably draw from that and like use the spice combinations or mixes that they would use back during, say the Middle Ages or in monasteries or whatever. And that sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe it's a lot of work, but it sounds like you want to do the work if you're using the big green egg and you want to have a themed meal. So I would check out the Tasting History YouTube channel because I think they probably have. He probably has a couple of recipes that might be a pretty good fit.
You could also go the route of a turkey leg. I can't imagine a situation where that would go wrong.
I mean, you want to have friends after the D&D session, right?
I suppose. Kenneth Allen asks, this week in my class, I'm showing clips from Star Trek The Next Generation and The Matrix. None of my students have seen either. What should I do now that I'm officially a boomer? This feels like the end for me.
So I can understand. So Star Trek: The Next Generation, obviously, as like a series, is better than the Matrix trilogy. But I can understand them not having seen The Next Generation. It is weird to me that they haven't seen The Matrix, but maybe that's just me being a boomer too.
No, we're old. That's how all of this worked. That movie is over 20 years old now.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get, like, they watch it, they wouldn't be impressed with the insanely groundbreaking special effects, fine. But, like, that'd be like not watching, like, when I was like 8, I got made fun of for having not seen not seeing Star Wars, right? Like, I mean, there's some movies that, like, 20 years after the fact, you probably should have seen. Weird that none of the students have seen The Matrix, to me anyway. But that just means I'm as old as you, and we're all boomers, except James is a super boomer because he's older than me. I don't know what that makes actual boomers, but ultra boomers, hyper boomers? Yeah, hyper boomers.
OG boomers?
No, that sounds cool. We can't have that.
We can't let the boomers think they're cool. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, the narrative is that they already seem to think that they're the bee's knees, as they would say. What should you do now that you're officially a boomer? You teach students, right? Make them rack up student debt. That seems like a boomer thing to do.
And also an option. I think you should just really lean into it, and especially with using movies in your classes. I think now would be a good time to break out parts of, say, Goodfellas. Or
play like Shawshank Redemption for like no particular reason.
And not even the whole thing, just the scene where the music plays in the courtyard. just play that for like no reason, or lean into it and play the entirety of the of Usual Suspects, or have that be.
That's great, yeah. Or like, hey, you know the guy that did the Dark Knight trilogy? He did this too, and then you play Memento.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Like just lean into, mid to early 90s cinema, maybe a little bit of early 2000s. Be like, all right, so this is called Trainspotting, or hey, this is called Requiem from a Dream. Try not to blink.
Jesus.
The end kind of gets a bit crazy.
Good Lord.
I can't.
Yeah, lean into it. Play a bunch of movies, and then after the fact, tell them that you've actually charged them for having played the movies. That's super boomer to me.
Yeah, partway through, just remind them that you rewrote the textbook while they were in class, and they need to buy a new one.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had a conversation with a teacher that was a bit like that. That was unfortunate. Damian Barrett asks, question for Arif's Flag Corner. Recent discussions about Washington, D.C. gaining statehood have proved troubling for me. Not because of any political arguments, just because of the sheer logistical ramifications of having to update every flag atlas and backpack patch to add an additional star. To solve this, I've reverted to consider Occam's razor, which tells us the simplest solution is usually the correct one. Should we deal with this by combining the Dakotas into one state, or just getting rid of Alaska?
I don't think that's what Occam's razor is. I don't think it's used for finding solutions. I think it's for finding answers to questions.
Yeah, I don't think you really solve anything here. And let me tell you, South Dakotans would be pissed to be grouped with North Dakotans. I think South Dakotans would be more upset than North Dakotans to be combined.
So here's my solution. So I think Alaska is like too interesting a territory to just give up. So my solution is you do combine the Dakotas into a single state, but you still just call it North Dakota. There's a North Dakota, and that's it. There's no South Dakota, East Dakota, West. It's just North Dakota.
So you live in a place, you get a neighbor who's called Doug, and then a couple years later, a new guy moves in, also called Doug, and you call him New Doug. Then old Doug moves away, and you just keep calling New Doug, New Doug. Yeah, and when a new Doug comes in, an additional Doug, you just call that guy Doug, and New Doug is still New Doug. Yeah. That's terrible. For the record, I think this is a horrible idea.
I love it. This is great.
Let me check Libsyn real quick to see how many listeners we have in Wyoming. I'm just going to see if we can incorporate Wyoming into Colorado.
While we're at it, why don't we just split the Michigans? I don't think the Yoopers like the glove. I don't know what the glove is called.
The mitt. It's the mitt, not the glove. It's the mitt.
So, but I don't want the UP to be part of Minnesota either. So I think that's its own state, which means we got to combine some more states. Obviously, the Carolinas, just like for name purposes, right? They obviously would hate that too. I think we can call all of it East Carolina, though.
I've heard of worse solutions on this show all of a few minutes ago, so this could work.
Yeah, so you split Michigan into two, but now you've got the same problem again, so you just combine the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And I think the funniest one is combining Vermont and New Hampshire, honestly. I think that one's hilarious because they are actually extremely different culturally. But like there's enough similarities that like you don't notice when you cross the border. But like the Carolinas are similar enough culturally as far as I understand. The Dakotas, as much as they have a rivalry with each other, are also very similar culturally. But like New Hampshire is just like a bunch of libertarians and Vermont's a bunch of socialists, and making them kind of figure that out, that sounds great to me.
That'd be great television if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd watch that.
Be like, well, as a social experiment for the next 4 years, we decided to try this.
Yeah. It'd be perfect.
See how they run. Let's go to Adam Bryant, who asks, when are we getting lamps in the Norse Code merch store?
Good question.
That's a wonderful question. Why would you want lamps in a merch store? Arif's neglected resistance bands ask, did Arif ever love me? Beef Brewski asks, Arif and James are gripped in a battle for the soul of the universe. They must compete in a 5-on-5 game of football. You each get to draft 4 players to fill out your roster. You can only pick actors from 80s action films.
This sounds great. I love the energy. It is 10:45 p.m. God.
And you've been up for days, let's be honest.
Yeah, right. First of all, the list that is here, I don't know if it was provided by Brewski or if it was provided by James. Oh, okay. The fact that it doesn't have Arnold Schwarzenegger on it is wild.
The thing is I was preparing for you to draft Arnold first pick overall.
Oh, so this was like a your board thing.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I would need a more complete roster of 1980s action film here. We could do this next episode, but I don't have that roster ready. I think you're right to presume that Schwarzenegger would be the first overall pick, but we haven't even decided who's picking first yet. I really like you put Jean-Claude Van Damme on here. I really like him.
That's my kicker, by the way. He's not. He's not going to be useful for a lot of things. But
blood squirt the balls through the uprights. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. He's going to find himself in situations where he's going to have to do the splits standing up on top of football players, but it could be done. So.
And I like you also have Bruce Willis here. He's a great like gritty slot receiver, like an Edelman type.
Yep.
I think.
So yeah. So preparing for next episode, I have Kurt Russell from first. I was debating if this was actually the actor or the character, because if it was the character, then I have to have Snake from the Escape from L.A. and Escape.
I think you picked the actors, but the actors kind of represent the ethos of the characters they played throughout the 1980s.
So I had Kurt Russell, Patrick Swayze, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Bruce Willis, with honorable mentions Jesse Ventura. I mean, say what you will about him as a human being, but...
Okay, I'm obviously ruining it because this would have been a great surprise pick at the end, but I'm just going to say it now because it's content. O.J. Simpson. he was in Terminator. And Naked
Gun originally happened in the 80s, yes.
But yeah, he's an action hero. He's an actor in an action film. I don't know if I'd call him an action hero, but if I can add a 2,000-yard rusher, I'm doing it.
I don't have the words to.
As you gonna tell me he's not good at football?
I'm not. I'm saying that there's other
He's got a
disqualifications.
Heisman, James.
No, I'm pretty well. He stole his back. Yes, that is accurate. He went to jail for that, but he did in fact have a Heisman at one point in his life. Yes, that is an incredibly accurate sentence. Probably one of the more accurate things we've said on the show tonight.
And
Yes.
one of the greatest rushers in Buffalo Bills history, a team that has had a history of excellent running backs. So
Yeah, it's almost like he, should receive more acclaim for his football stuff. I wonder if there was anything he did or was a part of potentially that
we are frozen in the 1980s, James.
My honorable mentions. I'm going to ignore this. The honorable mentions are Jesse Ventura and potentially RoboCop. If I'm able to have somebody, a star from the 80s. Wow, Arif, I'm almost speechless as a result of that pick.
Nailed it. Wow.
We'll do a draft of sorts, and we'll have a big board. I'll put together a big board for next episode. It'll be fantastic. Kyle Slaby asks, what does the crop of draftable kickers look like this year? I have a bad feeling it will be important to know.
It looks like people aren't really agreeing, based off of the consensus big board work I've done thus far. It looks like people aren't really agreeing on who the top kicker is, which means there's not really like a great one. But a lot of people have draftable kickers, but it's just like a different one for a lot of these different boards. So there's no like Zane Gonzalez or Blair Walsh or I guess Roberto Aguayo that is seen as the top kicker in this draft.
Next question is also from Kyle Slaby, who asks, my wife and I are going to Glacier National Park in July and looking for a place halfway along the road to stop for the evening. A good stopping distance is somewhere between Dickinson and Beach, North Dakota, along I-94. Which of those towns should we stop at, and what should we avoid?
I feel like this is a perfect James question.
This is, in fact, a perfect James question. You should stop at neither of them. You'll probably end up getting a better location or like a better room in Dickinson as opposed to Beach. But
the downside is that Dickinson is awful.
Well, the western half of the state is beautiful and has a lot of problems. What I would do... That's true.
I mean, no, that's true.
No, it's incredibly accurate, and the expansion of oil and expansion of population out in the western half of the state really showcased a lot of the problems that were already in existence out there,
and they infrastructurally could not deal with it.
No, and that's exactly it. It was like, oh, we have all these problems, but we don't have the people to really cause them to be worse. Oh, here's 100,000 people. All of a sudden, the problems are hard to ignore. And then when everybody leaves and the oil goes away, it's like, okay, well, what you should do is stop in Medora. That would be my suggestion. Medora is basically halfway between the two, and is right in the middle of the real Badlands for North Dakota and Teddy Roosevelt Park. Stop there.
Yeah,
You'll be able to find. You should be able to find something in Medora that's not too price gougy. The Medora musical is there, which is famous for a reason. Despite North Dakotans kind of being a little bit weird about it because we've all seen the commercials for too long, but it is in fact a thing. I've literally had a cousin who worked on it. I'm not alone as a North Dakotan to be able to say that, but just find yourself in Medora, check it out, do a little bit of Googling. It's totally worth it. It's a very, very pretty area of North Dakota. And as I said on Twitter, if you find yourself in Fargo, I will buy you a beer or four to help you get over the next 2 or so hours of absolute flat landscape that you were about to drive through, because North Dakota is flat as hell on I-94 until you hit like Jamestown. And then it slightly goes up and down. Let's go to Zen Cupid, who asks, how angry will Vikings Twitters be when Sean Payton, the Hero, the Netflix movie, is released?
I can't. I mean, Vikings Twitter is going to be outrageously angry, and probably more than it deserves to be. But they deserve. They should be angry. And then the amount that they should be angry is going to be amplified by the fact that it's going to be, and this is true for every Twitter, not just Vikings Twitter, that they get to amplify that anger amongst each other and find new things to be angry about and feel validated and in that anger and just keep going and going. And then it's just going to be like way too much. So they'll be apoplectic is what I'm saying. And they should just be kind of PO'd. Like, come on, this is dumb. That this. Why are we doing this? Why do we have like the year where I guess Paul Blart Mall Cop is gonna he's gonna coach a JV high school team while he's suspended from the NFL? Like, is he gonna be like Gordon Bombay? Like he starts out an asshole and by the end of the movie he's like good? It's weird. It's a real person.
So here's my favorite part about all of this is that the production company that's handling this is Happy Madison, which is Adam Sandler's.
Kidding? Really?
Yep, Adam Sandler's production company is handling this. They signed a deal a while ago with Netflix to produce a bunch of original content for them. So
that's right. Yeah, they have like 14 movies. Yeah,
it's a ridiculous number anyway.
Yeah,
might be closer to 7, but yeah, it's a large number of movies, and this happens to be one that's now in production. And my thought process when I read it was, okay, well, let's look at the cast of Grown Ups and see who is going to end up playing who in all of this. You know, Rob Schneider as Greg Williams sounds like a lot of fun. Then there's the question of who would end up playing Roger Goodell, and I think that could be David Spade. I think David Spade would be funny for that. And then you have to ask who ends up being Brad Childress. Because you have to show the game, right?
That's right, yeah.
You have to show the game as to what's going to end up happening there. And it was like, well, you could do Rob Schneider for that, too. Like, there's plenty of options. Rob Schneider has a lot of range if you've ever seen 50 First Dates. He has the ability to be... No, that's a terrible sentence. But... He has a lot of you could put him in a lot of different spots. So yeah, you could put him there. But I was like, what's Adam Sandler's role in this going to be? Like where is he going to end up being on? And what I thought was great was, and I had retweeted this as well. Sean Payton lost 2 games in a back to back against one of these teams, and it was covered in like Grantland, I think it was. And they were trying to figure out like how he lost or like what this meant as far as he had according to the article, he was like out schemed completely. And so Grantland was trying to figure out what that meant as far as coaches or whatever. Meanwhile, you could just look at it it was a peewee 6th grade football thing. But like, is there a deeper meaning? Because we need there to be a deeper meaning. And that article was really interesting. I wonder if it's going to cover that aspect of the season where he ends up losing for what he probably feels is no good goddamn reason.
Wow. Yeah, I had not considered that angle. That's amazing.
There's a lot of weird stuff that could go into this, and
oh God, who's going to be Favre?
Norm Macdonald.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I could get on board. I'm just going off of the box of Grown Ups 1 and Grown Ups 2 at this point. Like Chris Rock has got to be somebody. John Lovitz, I think, was in one of them. So there's plenty of options. Actually, John Lovitz as Roger Goodell could be entertaining. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be back shortly with all the wonderful stuff from the draft that you can possibly expect for breakdowns of players, of positions, of all of that, likely next episode. Also, if you'd like bonus material, you can get that over at patreon.com/NorseCode. Arif, where can they find all of your work?
You can find it over at The Athletic, theathletic.com/author/Arif-Hassan. Wrote 2... one piece that I really like, and the other one's a mock draft. They're doing equally well, which tells me a lot about effort. But I wrote a piece that goes into how all the mock drafts are kind of made, the mock draft simulators and stuff like that. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun. I talked to the guys at PFF, at the Draft Network, and at Fanspeak on the Clock. And we just kind of talked about like how these things get built and what it does and what happens. So that's really fun. Then I also wrote a 7-round mock draft, and the kind of angle for that mock draft is just only looking at the players that I identified in the previous piece of guys that kind of fit the Vikings kind of metrics. So yeah, you could find that over The Athletic. I kind of really liked both of those pieces.
All right, well, this is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys enjoyed it. For Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please remember to please punch reality right in the face. And we'll be back with the draft. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's official Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. You can also find his written work at theathletic.com. I am your podcast host and producer, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can make a recurring monthly contribution by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. A donation of $3.50 per month does get you bonus material from the show and much more. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.